Chapter 2241. She lowered her head abruptly and said helplessly, "I know that you despise me for being weak. But you said that you didn't care. You men are all bad guys." Luo Qingtong said, and even imitated the melodramatic TV series of the 24th century, pounding Yi Qianqian's chest with her small fists. Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others only felt their mouths twitching and their stomachs hurting. "Evil doctor, please stop acting. It's so painful to the eyes." In fact, Luo Qingtong's face was so beautiful that it could topple cities. At this moment, she was crying and looked so delicate and lovely, which was very enchanting and charming. She had an indescribable charm, just like a fairy that could captivate one's soul, causing one to be unable to take their eyes off her. However, Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others were used to Luo Qingtong's domineering and beautiful appearance. It was really difficult for them to associate this, delicate and pitiful girl with Luo Qingtong. They felt that their eyes were cramping and they had misjudged her. Needless to say, the people from the sects were completely dumbfounded. Yi Qianxian looked at the little woman in front of him who was addicted to acting and felt helpless. How did he fall in love with such a seductive spirit? He gritted his teeth slightly and grabbed Luo Qingtong's hand that was pounding and touching him. He accepted his fate and cooperated with her. "Yes, it's my fault," Yi Qianxian said and gritted his teeth. "I shouldn't be involved with outsiders." He took a deep breath and said, "If you don't like them, I will drive them away immediately." "Great." Luo Qingtong smiled and gave Yi Qianxian a look that said, "You are a promising child." Then she covered her face and cried, "Look, you finally admitted it." "Humph, I knew that she looked at you the same way those people looked at you when we passed by Wanhua Building that day. They couldn't wait to tear off your clothes and eat you. How can there be no relationship? Woo woo woo. You men are all liars." As Luo Qingtong spoke, she purposely stomped her feet. She acted very realistically as a woman who caught her man cheating on her and made a scene out of nothing. Hearing Luo Qingtong's words, Bei Qing and Feng Yu's lips twitched even more. Master's lifetime of wisdom. Fortunately, this place was remote and no one knew the identity of the master. Otherwise, if word got out, who knew how many jaws would drop? His master, who had always been cold, dignified and noble, like the Son of God, actually had such a helpless side, lowering his head and compromising. Or was he playing along with Luo Qingtong? This was probably something that only the evil doctor could do, right? She wanted her master to completely give up her dignity and nobility, allowing her to do whatever she wanted and pamper her. Everyone was sighing. On the other side, Mo Zhuling couldn't hold it in anymore. It was fine that her words were ignored, but Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian were openly showing off their affection in front of her. Compared to Luo Qingtong's unreasonable behavior and Yi Qianxian's indulgence, Mo Zhuling felt as if her heart had been pierced. What made her clench her teeth even more was that Luo Qingtong actually said that she and those people from Wanhua Building, wasn't that the name of a brothel? She said that she was the same as the prostitutes in a brothel. Chapter 2242. She hated that she couldn't tear off Yi Qianqian's clothes and bite him. Mo Zhuling did indeed have some unknown thoughts about Yi Qianxian, but it wasn't to the extent of revealing them so blatantly. She suppressed the emotions in her eyes very well. But when Luo Qingtong said those words, it seemed as if she was really looking at Yi Qianxian shamelessly. In an instant, Mo Zhuling looked as if someone had ruthlessly ripped off a layer of his skin. He was battered and exhausted. After all, how thirsty was she? How much did she want a man? That was why she was so fixated on Yi Qianxian. To put it bluntly, brothel prostitutes had to see if the patron was rich and whether they could settle the matter with money. She was great. She had only glanced at Yi Qianxian from God knows where outside, and then eagerly came looking for him. She even used Luo Qingtong's matter to threaten Yi Qianxian to join the Star Alliance. She couldn't wait to throw herself at him. She was worse than a brothel prostitute. Luo Qingtong's short sentence seemed to be making trouble for Yi Qianxian, but in reality, she had ripped off Mo Zhuling's skin, put it on the ground, and stepped on it again and again. She made it sound as if she was worthless. Mo Zhuling's entire body trembled. She glanced at the group of Star Alliance experts beside her, only to see that they were all looking at her with a strange expression. They obviously believed Luo Qingtong's words. After all, they were standing beside Mo Zhuling. They didn't notice the way Mo Zhuling looked at Yi Qianxian earlier. But from the fact that she ignored their attempts to stop her and stubbornly wanted to use Luo Qingtong's matter to threaten Yi Qianxian and didn't hesitate to lie, they still believed Luo Qingtong's words. After all, Mo Zhuling had made it so obvious. This was simply too embarrassing. All the experts from the Star Alliance felt extremely ashamed. They knew that Mo Zhuling was interested in Yi Qianxian. Otherwise, he wouldn't have chased after him in every possible way and traveled thousands of miles to find him. For this reason, he did not hesitate to use the Alliance Master's favor in the past. But eldest miss should at least be a little more subtle, right? Now that they were caught red-handed by someone else, and it was someone else's legal wife, even if eldest young miss didn't feel ashamed, they felt ashamed. The faces of the Star Alliance experts were not looking good. They looked at Mo Zhuling with displeasure. "Young miss," a Star Alliance expert lowered his voice and said in a deep voice. His tone was very unyielding. "Please consider the Star Alliance and don't cross the line." They could not afford to lose face like this. What's more, eldest miss still had an engagement. She thought about how Mo Zhuling was still in love with Yi Qianxian despite his engagement. If Mo Zhuling was also interested in her, they would be happy to see it happen and go with the flow. But this would make it obvious that Mo Zhuling was not interested in her. If eldest miss continued to be so unforgiving, she would be throwing the Star Alliance's face to the ground and stepping on it. The Star Alliance experts could not tolerate this. If it weren't for Mo Zhuling's status, they would have forcefully dragged her back. Mo Zhuling bit down hard on her lips when she heard what the Star Alliance powerhouse said. Her pink lips were about to bleed from the force of her bite. "I didn't." She forced herself to lower her voice and blurted out these words. She did not look at Yi Qianxian that way at all. That vixen across from her was slandering her. Mo Zhuling was very sure that she did not look at Yi Qianxian like Luo Qingtong said. She hid it very well. The girl across from her said that on purpose. Mo Zhuling was jealous that Luo Qingtong could stay by Yi Qianxian's side. Chapter 2243. Apart from being unreasonable, spoiled, and willful, there was nothing good about her. What was there to like about her? Not to mention, Luo Qingtong was so insidious. She actually dared to lie to her face. She made her sound like she was worthless. Mo Zhuling was so angry that her chest heaved up and down rapidly. She had completely forgotten that she had always coveted Yi Qianxian. Luo Qingtong had only revealed her hidden thoughts. How was that slander? On the other hand, she had deliberately used Luo Qingtong to threaten Yi Qianxian because she didn't want to miss out on Yi Qianxian's eviction order. She didn't hesitate to distort the truth and say that the treasures in the land of the deceased immortals were discovered by the Star Alliance first. This was the true viciousness of slander. Luo Qingtong looked indifferently at the hatred and anger in Mo Zhuling's eyes. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. She didn't care at all. When the other party had the intention to slander her, she should have been aware of this. Why did she think that a vase in trash like her was easy to bully? Unfortunately, even if Luo Qingtong was a useless vase, she would still let her know what it meant to suffer in silence. She coveted her man and wanted to scheme against her. The corners of Luo Qingtong's lips curled up slightly. The wickedness and coldness in her eyes didn't disappear from the beginning. Mo Zhuling, who had been staring at Luo Qingtong angrily, saw the smile on her lips. In an instant, she clenched her fists in anger. Bastard! This woman, she really did it on purpose. Mo Zhuling was already very angry because Luo Qingtong had directly pointed out her feelings for Yi Qianxian. In addition, the persuasion of the group of Star Alliance experts made her feel extremely embarrassed. Luo Qingtong made her sound like she was worse than a prostitute who could sleep with anyone. How could she let go of the anger in her heart? Not to mention, when she saw the smile on Luo Qingtong's lips, she was so angry that her whole body trembled. This woman. She gritted her teeth. Unable to tolerate being tricked by Luo Qingtong and losing face, Mo Zhuling simply ignored the persuasion of the Star Alliance experts around him. He stepped forward and said to Yi Qianxian, "Gongzi. I wonder if you've considered what I just said." As she spoke, she looked coldly at Luo Qingtong and said, "If you're sure that you don't want to join our Star Alliance, then we have no choice but to invite this girl to our Star Alliance." After all, as she spoke to hear, she raised her chin, her voice full of arrogance. "Even if we don't care about the treasures of this low-level 9th-class continent, it's not something that anyone can casually take. Especially since it involves the lives of the true Spill Continent Star Alliance whole. We don't know the truth, but we must investigate." As she spoke to hear, she looked at Yi Qianxian and said, "Gongzi, you're strong, so we don't want to pursue this matter. We'll drop the matter of the Star Alliance Hall's people being killed. But the treasures on this girl's body will have to be taken out. We'll deal with them after we've determined the truth. If we're sure that the treasures are ours, then we'll naturally return them to their rightful owners. Of course, in order to prevent the treasures from being deceived by others, this girl will absolutely have to come with us to the Star Alliance." Chapter 2244. Mo Zhuling was determined to keep Yi Qianxian in the Star Alliance. She didn't believe that with her identity, appearance, talent and strength, she couldn't move the other party. He was just mesmerized by the vixen next to him. When he found out that the other party couldn't help him with anything other than trouble and embarrassment, he would know who was more suitable for him. Mo Zhuling was confident that he could take the other party. As for Luo Qingtong, she sneered at the girl opposite her. She wanted to see what the other party could do without the man's protection. After leaving the man, when the Star Alliance arrived, she had plenty of ways to deal with her. When Mo Zhuling's words sounded, Yi Qianming's eyes turned cold. He pressed down on Luo Qingtong's body that was about to straighten up and pressed her back into his arms. He knew that this woman would be happy to follow him to the Star Alliance. But Yi Qianming wouldn't allow it. Although he knew that this woman was evil and cunning, she might not be at a disadvantage. But this didn't mean that it was absolute. The Star Alliance's headquarters wasn't like other places. Yi Qianming couldn't let Luo Qingtong take risks. This woman had better behave herself. He could let her do whatever she wanted, but when it came to her safety, he absolutely couldn't. Not to mention that Luo Qingtong had lost all her strength, Yi Qianming wouldn't let her take risks. Luo Qingtong was helplessly held in the man's arms. Her small face knocked against Yi Qianming's collarbone. She raised her hand and rubbed her right cheek that was hurt from the knock. Her lips twitched slightly. Why did this man use so much strength? Was he afraid that she would agree? She wasn't that stupid. That Star Alliance's eldest miss was obviously digging a hole for her to jump into, and she even brought Yi Qianming along. She would only do as she wished if there was something wrong with her brain. Even if it was to deal with the other party, Luo Qingtong wouldn't joke about Yi Qianming's matter. Previously, when she faced Fang Jingyu outside the Graveyard of Immortals, Luo Qingtong would rather expose her identity and make the Celestial Palace and Beast-Taming King Valley hostile than use Yi Qianming as a stake. There was no way he would agree to go to Star Alliance with Mo Zhuling just because he was angry. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong felt a burst of anger. However, the corners of his lips curled up. Yi Qianming was worried about her. Luo Qingtong found a comfortable position in Yi Qianming's arms and laid there motionlessly. Since she no longer had any strength, she might as well let this man perform well. Didn't Mo Zhuling think that she was just a pretty face and not worthy of this man? Then she would just be a vase. It felt pretty good. Luo Qingtong thought of this and the corners of her lips curled up even higher. Yi Qianming was originally afraid that she wouldn't be willing to struggle, but when he saw that she only wriggled a few times in his arms and stopped moving, he immediately felt relieved. This woman had finally learned to be a little more obedient. Yi Qianming thought of this and the light in his eyes softened slightly. The cold and hard lines on his face softened a lot. He lowered his head and stared at the spiral of hair on the girl's head. There was a strange sense of satisfaction in his heart. Luo Qingtong's obedient appearance was really too rare. This kind of soft and harmless, two-faced and obedient appearance was what Yi Qianming liked the most. It was a pity that this woman would only be like this when she lost her strength. Chapter 22:45. But Yi Qianming also knew that if he really did that, he would only lose Luo Qingtong. The girl's radiance was dazzling and peerless. She had her own self-esteem and pride. She would never live by his side like a canary, like a bird in a cage without anyone to rely on. After losing her wings, the phoenix would only cry blood to the sky and die. She would never become a plaything or ornament in the hands of others. Yi Qianming loved Luo Qingtong, so he could only give her the freedom and pride to fly. Even if she would fly away proudly because of this, he would not hesitate. But Yi Qianming gently stroked Luo Qingtong's hair on the top of her head. His phoenix would not fly far. A fine bird chooses a tree to nest in, and a pearl shines in the light. Yi Qianming believed that there was no one in this world more suitable for Luo Qingtong than him. I'll give you 3 breaths of time. Get out of here immediately. Yi Qianming gently stroked Luo Qingtong's hair. He didn't even raise his head and just said coldly. As for the treasure and the Star Alliance Hall that you mentioned, within 3 days, I will send someone to send a treasure that is 100 times more valuable to the Star Alliance. This Star Alliance Hall matter will be written off. Mo Zhuling obviously didn't know what Luo Qingtong got, and Yi Qianming didn't want to make a big deal out of it. After all, with Mo Zhuling's identity, a slight move would affect the whole situation. Yi Qianming didn't care about her and the Star Alliance. But if the Star Alliance people noticed that Luo Qingtong had a lot of sector beasts, then it would cause endless trouble for Luo Qingtong. Therefore, Yi Qianming didn't make a move immediately. She dared to threaten him and even used Luo Qingtong to threaten him. This young miss of the Star Alliance thought that he would give in. He had really made the wrong decision. He would only kill all of them here. The Star Alliance was nothing to him. If it wasn't for the fact that Luo Qingtong's previous strength wasn't suitable for her to go there, Yi Qianming would have already taken her away from here. Mo Zhuling didn't even have a chance to meet him. It was merely a 9-star domain. When Mo Zhuling heard Yi Qianming's words, his face turned pale. She bit her lips and looked at Yi Qianming. She didn't expect that Yi Qianming would ignore her even after she had made herself so clear. He asked him to scram. Mo Zhuling was both embarrassed and angry. She stared at the direction where Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianming were leaning against each other. She bit her lips so hard that they were about to bleed. The Star Alliance experts around her were restless. The compensation of 100 times that of a high-grade continent was already enough to shock them. The strength of the other party and the depth of their foundation were absolutely not something they could imagine. They couldn't let the eldest miss continue to cause trouble like this. The other party's compensation was enough for them to settle the matter peacefully. To put it bluntly, not to mention the deaths of the true Spill Continent Star Alliance experts, even if another 10 groups died, they might not be able to match up to 1/10 of the compensation that Yi Qianming offered. What's more, the fact that Luo Qingtong's treasure belonged to the Star Alliance was originally the eldest Miss's deliberate distortion of the truth. Everyone thought about it and immediately wanted to persuade her. If the eldest Miss didn't agree, then they would take her away by force. They absolutely couldn't let the eldest Miss continue to be so willful. It didn't matter if they offended the eldest Miss because of this. After all, this matter was originally the eldest Miss' fault. If they reported this matter, the ones who would be punished would definitely not be them. On the contrary, not only were they not at fault, they were also meritorious. Everyone thought so and immediately wanted to speak. Chapter 2246. No need. We, the Star Alliance, won't take advantage of you. Mo Zhuling said resolutely. Her gaze was fixed on Luo Qingtong. Her eyes were filled with jealousy. What right did she have to receive Yi Qianqian's love and protection? How was she not better than her? But the other party just told her to get lost. As the daughter of the Star Alliance's leader, Mo Zhuling had always gotten whatever she wanted. In the Star Domain, countless young talents had expressed their goodwill to her. She had never been rejected. Nor had she been ignored so thoroughly. She saw how Yi Qianxian cared for Luo Qingtong, causing waves of anger and jealousy to rise in her heart. She definitely wouldn't let it go so easily. The other party had to go back with her. As long as she could keep the other party in the Star Alliance, she would have a chance. Mo Zhuling thought so and immediately said in a deep voice, "We, the Star Alliance, are not blackmailing you. Gongzi, please accept your compensation. As for the treasure on her, since it belongs to the Star Alliance, we must take it away. If Gongzi isn't willing to join the Star Alliance, then we can only offend you. Young Miss." The moment Mo Zhuling's words left her mouth, the Star Alliance experts around her were shocked. They couldn't help but anxiously cry out. What was the young miss trying to do? This was too much. The crowd thought. They didn't even try to persuade her and directly wanted to take her away by force. However, before they could do anything, Mo Zhuling's voice rang out again. Shut up. Her voice was cold. Her gaze swept across the Star Alliance experts. This matter concerns the honor of the Star Alliance. Whoever dares to stop me will be smearing the honor of the Star Alliance. At that time, don't blame me for being rude when I return. As soon as Mo Zhuling said that, the Star Alliance experts who were about to attack immediately froze. Mo Zhuling's words were too serious. They couldn't bear the consequences. Even though they knew that Mo Zhuling was abusing his position for personal gain, they didn't dare to act rashly when Mo Zhuling used the honor and reputation of the Star Alliance to pressure them. Young Miss. Are you stupid? A Star Alliance expert said angrily. That expert clearly had the intention to back down, but the eldest young miss just had to be overbearing. Did she think that by forcing him to join Star Alliance, he would do as she wished? She had pushed away an ally that she could have made a good relationship with for no reason, just because of her little girly thoughts. The experts of the Star Alliance found it hard to understand. At this time, Mo Zhuling looked at Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian and said, Young master. Please ask the girl beside you to come out. Otherwise, I can't guarantee what I will do. Please forgive me, young master. Mo Zhuling's lips curled into a smile, but his face was full of arrogance. She looked in Luo Qingtong's direction and sneered with disdain. So what if he had someone protecting him? She didn't believe that this man would go against the Star Alliance for her. Since he had the intention to back down, it meant that he didn't want to go against the Star Alliance. That was why Mo Zhuling had threatened her so harshly. However, she didn't know that she had completely misunderstood the cause and effect. Yi Qianxian had been willing to back down because he didn't want the Star Alliance to find out that Luo Qingtong had a sector beast. It wasn't because he was afraid of the Star Alliance. Since Mo Zhuling was so overbearing. Chapter 2247. He lowered his head and said to Luo Qingtong, "Wait here, I'll be back soon." Mo Zhuling had a lot of venerable realm powerhouses around him. And they weren't like that skeleton with an incomplete consciousness. Yi Qianxian couldn't clash with them in the True Spill Continent. Otherwise, the True Spill Continent would be destroyed. And Luo Qingtong and the others would also suffer. The girl didn't have any strength in her body. Yi Qianxian couldn't let her be in danger. "You stay here and protect her," he said to Feng Yu. "Yes." Feng Yu hurriedly accepted the order. Naturally, he knew his master's scruples. Yi Qianxian went out to deal with the people from the Star Alliance. If a fish escaped the net and broke into the True Spill Continent, it wouldn't be good if they hurt the evil doctor. His master really planned for the evil doctor to the extreme. But his master was probably enjoying it, right? After all, the evil doctor was rarely protected by his master like this. Feng Yu secretly thought in his heart. After Yi Qianming finished instructing Feng Yu, he turned to Mo Zhuling and the others and said, "I'll go back with you." As soon as he said this, Mo Zhuling's eyes lit up. "Okay." She looked at Yi Qianming, her face full of unconcealable joy. This man had indeed compromised for the sake of the woman beside him. Mo Zhuling's lips curled up slightly. The joy in his eyes couldn't be concealed, although he still hated Luo Qingtong in his heart. But since the man had compromised, then that woman was nothing to be afraid of. Mo Zhuling chuckled, his heart full of joy. When this man went back with her to the Star Alliance and saw her identity and strength, why would he think of this woman again? There would be no harm if there was no comparison. Mo Zhuling was confident that if Yi Qianming saw her excellence, why would he fall for a useless woman like Luo Qingtong? She suddenly looked at Yi Qianming coquettishly and shyly, then turned around and led the way. A group of experts from the Star Alliance followed behind her, their hearts filled with bewilderment. They didn't know why Yi Qianming changed his mind so quickly. Looking at the man's calm expression, the powerhouses of the Star Alliance felt their hearts skip a beat. He wouldn't be planning to wipe out all of them, would he? However, the crowd quickly denied this idea. After all, although they weren't the strongest in the Star Alliance, they were still above average. A group of Green Supremacy Realm and Cyan Supremacy Realm experts were all extremely powerful among their peers. Not to mention there were other people protecting her. No matter how tyrannical the other party's strength was, he might not be able to kill them all. At that time, as long as one escaped, the entire continent would be destroyed. The other party probably wouldn't do that. With this thought in mind, everyone immediately felt relieved. In the True Spill Continent. After Luo Qingtong said something to Feng Yu, she sat on the ground and prepared to meditate. She wanted to see if she could regenerate a little power from her dantian and restore her strength. She had been sucked dry, not even a little bit was left. Otherwise, the power would have been replenished by itself. Now, she had to restart the cultivation method, just like an ordinary person who had just started cultivating. She had to regenerate power from nothing. This process would take anywhere from 2 to 4 hours to 2 to 3 days. However, Luo Qingtong was a fraud. She had transmigrated. Her body had its own strength. She didn't have the experience of starting from nothing. She had to slowly explore from the basics. The time she needed to spend was much longer than the average person. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong's lips twitched slightly. No one would believe her if she told others about this. A dignified holy venerable realm powerhouse didn't even know the basics of cultivation. But she just didn't know. What could she do? As Luo Qingtong thought about it, her lips twitched even more. Chapter 2248. A huge whirlpool suddenly appeared beside her. Luo Qingtong's entire body was immersed in her body, and she was unaware of the outside world. When this huge vortex appeared, her eyes suddenly opened, and the consciousness in her body fiercely returned. However, it was too late. Shwa! The moment she opened her eyes, Luo Qingtong's figure disappeared from the spot. Evil doctor. Not far away, Feng Yu was slightly retreating to avoid disturbing Luo Qingtong's recovery. He was adjusting his breath as he saw this scene, and instantly turned pale with fright. He hurriedly ran over. However, this vortex was too fast for him to react. By the time he rushed in front of Luo Qingtong, the girl had already disappeared in front of him. Evil doctor. Feng Yu reached out his hand, and only caught a mass of air that had disappeared. Luo Qingtong's entire body, such a big living person, had disappeared right in front of him just like that. When Feng Yu's figure rushed towards Luo Qingtong, Su Yu and the other sect members who were adjusting their breath and increasing their strength saw this scene. In an instant, Su Yu, Su Xiaoxiao, and the others fiercely jumped up from the ground. Not only that, but Su Yu, Ling Tianhan, and the others who were adjusting their breath and restoring their strength, abruptly interrupted their circulation of breath. They spat out blood as they rushed towards Luo Qingtong. Master! Boss! Everyone's voices were filled with tears of blood as they watched Luo Qingtong's figure disappear in front of them. What's going on? How could Master suddenly disappear in front of them? The group of people were almost crazy as they bombarded the place where Luo Qingtong had disappeared, trying to find a clue as to how Luo Qingtong had left. Just as they were about to go crazy, outside the true Spill continent, Yi Qianqian's eyes were cold as he passed through the star gate with Mo Zhuling and the others, and appeared in the starry sky outside the star gate. The true Spill continent was beneath their feet. From what Yi Qianxian and the others could see, this floating continent was a relatively large one. Such continents could be found everywhere in the starry sky. He would not leave the astral gate before reaching the venerable realm. The exalted realm was the best cultivation for a cultivator to survive in the outer realms. Although a sage realm cultivator could survive in the starry sky, there was a limit to how long they could last. He had to find another continent to enter and replenish his strength when his strength reached its limit. Otherwise, they would be crushed to death by the immense spirit chi pressure in the outer realm. This was the reason why Yi Qianxian hadn't taken Luo Qingtong to the outer space when she had reached the Saint Realm. The strength of the Saint Realm was the minimum requirement to enter the starry sky, but it wasn't the minimum requirement to survive. That kind of strength was too low, completely at the bottom of the outer realm. The slightest accident could lead to Luo Qingtong's death. Yi Qianxian naturally wouldn't let Luo Qingtong take this risk, although he knew he could protect her. But what Luo Qingtong wanted was definitely not his constant protection and the ability to be at the bottom of the hierarchy. This was why he had told Luo Qingtong not to go to the outer realms when she was still in the Sage Realm. At that time, Yi Qianxian had already planned for Luo Qingtong to go to the land of the fallen immortals. Chapter 2249. Afterwards, she refined the immortal jade bone and increased her strength. Luo Qingtong's strength had increased by leaps and bounds. Yi Qianqian's plan had not been put to use. Thinking of the girl who always brought him great surprises and shocks, the corners of Yi Qianqian's lips curled up. But soon, he pulled them back down. Yi Qianxian coldly looked at Mo Zhuling and the others in front of him. After exiting the star door, he stopped. Bei Qing and the others behind him also stopped when they saw him stop. Each of them coldly looked at Mo Zhuling and the others in front of them. These people from the Star Alliance really didn't know what was good for them. They actually dared to threaten their master. Perhaps Mo Zhuling and the others thought that the strength of the Star Alliance was strong enough. However, if their master's strength wasn't limited, even if there were 10 or 20 Star Alliance members, he would still be able to turn them into ashes. He wouldn't give them any chance to resist. Bei Qing and the others' eyes were cold. As for Mo Zhuling and the others, they had already sensed something the moment Yi Qianren and the others stopped. "Young master, why did you stop?" Mo Zhuling looked at Yi Qianxian with sparkling eyes. She glanced at Bei Qing and the others behind Yi Qianxian and chuckled. "Young master, are you going back on your word?" She gently covered her mouth, smiling peacefully and beautifully. "Young master, do you think you can go all out now that you've left the true Spill continent? However, as the daughter of the Star Alliance's leader, I can't lack protection. Therefore, I advise young master not to waste his time. Unless you can kill me and the people around me in an instant. Otherwise, as long as one of us escapes or a piece of news spreads out, I'm afraid that the true Spill continent and the girl inside will be in big trouble." Mo Zhuling's voice was sweet. She looked at Yi Qianxian and chuckled. "So, young master, you should obediently come with me." Mo Zhuling was full of confidence. The people in front of her were not the only ones she had to protect. Yi Qianxian had left True Spill continent and no longer had any scruples, but wasn't she the same? She loved the man in front of her. Even if she had to force him, she would force him to join the Star Alliance. At that time, they would be together every day and every night. She believed that he would definitely be moved by her. Mo Zhuling looked at Yi Qianxian affectionately. "Young master, please." Her words were filled with strong confidence and pride. However, Yi Qianxian only glanced at her and did not say anything. Even the expression on his face did not change at all. Bei Qing and the others calmly looked at Mo Zhuling, their faces full of amusement. The other party could have used anything to threaten their master, but he chose to use strength. Not to mention that she had other people protecting her, even the Star Alliance's leader and the others were here to protect her. Under the full power of his master, he was still disintegrated like a chicken or a dog. The other party did not understand the extent of their master's strength. If they did not consider the damage to their meridians, how could their master kill them in an instant? An instant was enough for them to die 100 times over. Even if the Star Alliance's leader and the others were here, it would still be the same. Everyone coldly looked at Mo Zhuling and the others. Chapter 2250. Surround them. To kill them, why would he need Bei Qing and the others to attack together? Yi Qianxian didn't bring them out to surround and kill Mo Zhuling and the others. It was to surround Mo Zhuling and the others so that they wouldn't have a chance to escape and enter the true Spill continent, threatening the existence of Luo Qingtong and the others. If it weren't for this, why would Yi Qianxian bring Bei Qing and the others out? Why would he leave with Mo Zhuling and the others and wait until they were outside the true Spill continent before attacking? Young master. Seeing Bei Qing and the others disperse, Mo Zhuling's heart fiercely thumped. She looked at Yi Qianxian, her shy eyes revealing a trace of disbelief. The other party had actually attacked. Under the circumstances where he had made his words so obvious. Why? There was no benefit to him at all. He still wanted to attack. Wasn't it better to return to the Star Alliance with her? That useless woman from the true Spill continent, how was she better than her? Was it just because of her face? How could he be so reckless? Mo Zhuling's fingernails clenched. Her beautiful eyes looked in Yi Qianxian's direction, and she coldly said, "Young master. Think about it carefully. I know you are tyrannical, but with just you and the people around you, you don't have the ability to make us all stay here and not leak a single piece of information. If you stop now, I can pretend that this never happened." In Mo Zhuling's opinion, Yi Qianxian's strength was tyrannical. Before, he had seriously injured the powerhouses of the Star Alliance who had gone to hunt the nine-tailed fox. But even with such strength, he might not be able to contend with the Star Alliance. After all, the powerhouses who had gone to hunt the nine-tailed fox were not all of the Star Alliance's powerhouses. Not to mention that her father and the most powerful elders of the main hall did not participate in that hunt. Even though the other party was able to heavily injure the Star Alliance members, they didn't have the strength to kill them. Was that not the case? Now, he was actually going against the Star Alliance for the sake of a woman from a ninth-tier continent, and even wanted to kill her. This made Mo Zhuling feel as if her heart was being ruthlessly sliced by something. She simply could not accept this. She was the pride of the heavens. How could he not be comparable to a woman from a low-grade ninth-class continent? Just as Mo Zhuling was gritting his teeth in his heart, the sudden change in the aura around them caused their expressions to change instantly. This? The Star Alliance fighters around Mo Zhuling looked at Yi Qianxian in shock. The man's body exuded a terrifying power that was as vast as the long river of heaven. In that instant, all of their bodies were imprisoned. The flowing river of stars and the resplendent starry sky seemed to freeze in that instant. All of the spiritual aura around them froze in that instant. Even the aura within their bodies froze. The man's aura was so vast that it almost instantly enveloped them and the space around them. In that instant, he was the ruler of this starry sky. Wherever his aura enveloped, it was his king's domain. The terrifying power that erupted from Yi Qianxian's body made everyone tremble in fear. Chapter 2251. And this was only the power of his aura. The experts of the Star Alliance looked at Yi Qianxian with indescribable shock in their eyes. Especially Mo Zhuling. She was suddenly enveloped by Yi Qianxian's aura. Even though she used all the treasures that the leader of the Star Alliance had given her, she couldn't move at all. Only now did she know how powerful this man was. Could it be that he was still hiding his true strength when he was hunting the nine-tailed fox? Otherwise, with the strength that he was showing now, how could those experts of the Star Alliance return to the Star Alliance alive? Mo Zhuling's face was full of shock. But he didn't know that Yi Qianxian's meridians were limited at that time. Before he killed the nine-tailed fox and took her essence blood to prolong his life. With his strength, he couldn't free himself to kill those experts of the Star Alliance who were secretly plotting against him while he was dealing with the nine-tailed fox. But now, he had already taken the essence blood of the nine-tailed fox, and his meridians had recovered a lot of strength. Now, the strength that he could withstand was greatly increased. Naturally, the strength that Yi Qianxian could use was also greater. Yi Qianxian's full strength was about 50% of his strength when he was at his peak. But it couldn't last long. Otherwise, the nine-tailed fox's essence blood would be used up too much, and his meridians would collapse again. At that time, the effect of the 3 years of life extension would disappear completely. But even if he could only attack for a moment, it was enough to kill all of Mo Zhuling and the others in front of him. Including the people who were hiding around her, the people she was supposed to protect. Get out here. Yi Qianxian's cold voice sounded. In the next second, under the wide-open eyes of Mo Zhuling and the others, figures were all squeezed out of the starry sky by the terrifying power that was wildly overflowing from Yi Qianxian's body. Uncle Zhang. Seeing those people being forced out of the starry sky, Missouri Zhuling's beautiful eyes widened. His eyes were full of disbelief. Uncle Zhang was the leader of these people. At the same time, he was the captain of the personal guards of the Star Alliance's leader. At the same time, he was one of the 9 Amethyst Elder powerhouses. And the strength of the Star Alliance's personal guards were all at least at the Amethyst Elder realm. These people were all the trusted aides of the Star Alliance's leader. It was unknown how much manpower and effort was spent to cultivate them. If it wasn't necessary, they wouldn't be used. Uncle Zhang's people's Uncle Zhang's was Uncle Zhang. The latter's strength and identity were a mystery. Uncle Zhang's Uncle Zhang was the Star Alliance's Com Yi Zhang's. Thus, Uncle Zhang brought the Star Alliance's personal guards to protect Mo Zhuling. The latter's confidence all came from Uncle Zhang and the others. But at this moment, nearly 20 amethyst elder powerhouses were all frozen in midair by Yi Qianqian's aura. They didn't even have the strength to fight back. Even Uncle Zhang, a 9th realm amethyst elder, whose strength wasn't any weaker than the grand elders of the main hall, was the same. The complexions of the Star Alliance's powerhouses finally changed. They looked at the man in front of them, who was like a king descending to the world. They didn't know how he could be so strong. Even a 9th level amethyst elder could be easily stopped by him. Just how strong was the other party? Chapter 2252. Qingtong. He could feel Luo Qingtong's aura instantly vanish from the true Spill continent. She had truly vanished. Her aura no longer existed within the true Spill continent. Yi Qianren didn't have time to deal with Mo Zhuling and the others. He flicked his sleeves and rushed towards true Spill continent. Master. Seeing Yi Qianqian's sudden movements, Bei Qing and the others were shocked. What was going on? What happened to the evil doctor? Everyone knew just how important Luo Qingtong was to Yi Qianxian. It could be said that 100 Star Alliance members added together weren't as important as a single hair on Luo Qingtong's head. Immediately, everyone followed Yi Qianxian towards the true Spill continent. As Yi Qianxian's figure left, the Star Alliance powerhouses instantly regained their freedom. Young miss, this time you've really stirred up a great disaster. Uncle Zhang's complexion was ugly. As he looked at the departing figures of Yi Qianxian and the others, he was horrified to the extreme. He had just been forced out of the starry skies, and all his struggles had been useless. Finally, he had been suppressed by the other party's mountain-like strength. He hadn't been able to use the least bit of his strength. How had the young miss managed to provoke such a powerhouse? And he had even forced them to surround and kill them. What the hell is going on here? He angrily glared at the people around Mo Zhuling. You accompanied the young miss to that low-level continent to invite that powerhouse, so how did things end up like this? Uncle Zhang's complexion was ugly. If they didn't tell the truth, he would tear them all to shreds. Because they were too strong, they didn't want to enter the true Spill continent, lest they arouse the other party's hostility. Who would have thought that Mo Zhuling and the others would go and bring them out? But in the end, the other party wanted to kill them. If they didn't explain this matter clearly, he would immediately skin them alive. The experts of the Star Alliance, on the other hand, didn't dare to hide the truth when they saw the fury on his face. Not to mention that they had always been against Mo Zhuling doing this, but the latter still insisted on doing it. Now that they had angered Mo Zhuling, who was much more powerful than they had imagined, how could they be willing to take the blame for him? He immediately recounted everything that had happened in the true Spill continent. Finally, he emphasized that they had repeatedly tried to dissuade him, but Mo Zhuling had stubbornly refused to listen. Everyone's words were exactly the same. When Uncle Zhang heard this, his expression turned even uglier. Eldest miss, you're being silly. How could Mo Zhuling force such a strong cultivator? Even if the other party didn't have such strength in the end and really followed her back to Star Alliance, it would be good enough if he didn't find an opportunity to make the Star Alliance fall apart. Eldest miss actually hoped that the other party would change his mind and be together with her. But she didn't know that what such a strong cultivator hated the most was being threatened. Not to mention that the eldest miss had been aggressive and had threatened the other party more than once. Uncle Zhang's complexion was ugly to the extreme. He originally thought that if this matter wasn't serious, he would immediately take Mo Zhuling and leave this place and avoid this strong cultivator. But now that something like this had happened, he feared that the other party wouldn't let it go. Not to mention, listening to the other party's words, he feared that something had happened to the precious young girl he had left behind in the True Spill continent. If this matter was blamed on the Star Alliance, there would be no end of trouble. Chapter 2253. Now that things have come to this, there's no other way. He coldly looked at the Star Alliance members and said, "The only thing we can do now is to immediately gather all the elite experts of the Star Alliance and eliminate this expert. Otherwise, endless trouble." Uncle Zhang's voice was cold. Especially when the other party was the person who had previously snatched the nine-tailed fox that they wanted to kill. He thought of the secret information he had learned from the mouths of the Star Alliance's chief hall masters who had luckily escaped. They had secretly plotted against the mysterious expert and had almost let him be killed by the nine-tailed celestial fox. These grudges made Uncle Zhang's tone of voice not have the slightest hesitation when he gave the order. In an instant, he crushed the Star Alliance's emergency mobilization order in his hand. There were only a few of these in the entire Star Alliance. Apart from the Star Alliance's Grand Elders who had absolute control over most of the power in the Star Alliance, Uncle Zhang was the only one who had one. Once the Star Alliance's emergency mobilization order was issued, no matter where the experts of the Star Alliance were, they would immediately be summoned. Of course, this was only limited to the top purple venerable experts. Under normal circumstances, this order would only be used when the survival of the Star Alliance was in danger. Whoosh! Under Uncle Zhang's crushing, the Star Alliance's emergency mobilization order instantly condensed into a huge formation. Then, the top purple venerable experts of the Star Alliance all around the Star Alliance received the summons from the Star Alliance's emergency mobilization order. Apart from those who were in seclusion or in special secret realms and regions, and were unable to receive the summons, everyone else appeared in the formation. What's going on? A purple venerable level 9 expert of the Star Alliance rushed in front of Uncle Zhang. His gaze swept over the group and coldly said, "Why did you forcibly use the Star Alliance's emergency mobilization order? The Star Alliance emergency mobilization order cannot be used unless it concerns the life and death of the Star Alliance." However, when the top experts of the Star Alliance arrived, all they saw was a desolate and remote area. This region was located at the very edge of the Star Alliance's star field. It was surrounded by level 8 and 9 low-level continents. Even level 7 ones were extremely rare. How could there be anything that could endanger the survival of the Star Alliance in such a place? This 9th-level Amethyst Elder's face was extremely stern. How could Uncle Zhang and the others expose Mo Zhuling's wrongdoings to the public? It must be known that Mo Zhuling had done something that could destroy the Star Alliance and offend such a powerful and terrifying expert. Even with the protection of the Alliance Master, it would be difficult for the young miss to escape punishment. It was very likely that she would lose her identity and everything she had. Everyone thought this way and immediately kept their mouths shut. As for the people by Mo Zhuling's side, although they dared to tell Uncle Zhang the truth, it was because they couldn't hide it from him. Uncle Zhang would definitely protect Mo Zhuling. However, in front of these top experts of the Star Alliance, they didn't dare to make a sound. Once this matter was exposed, not only Mo Zhuling, but even they wouldn't be able to escape punishment. Furthermore, the young miss had the protection of the Alliance Master. They wouldn't be so lucky. When the top experts of the Star Alliance appeared, Mo Zhuling fiercely bit his lips. She looked in Yi Qianqian's direction. She was unwilling to give up on the man's handsome appearance and powerful strength. Something seemed to have happened to that seductive bitch. If something really happened to her, and Yi Qianxian was under the pressure of the top experts of the Star Alliance, was willing to abandon their former enmity and compromise with the Star Alliance, would she still have a chance to be with him? Thinking this, Mo Zhuling's heart began to violently beat. She looked towards the true Spill continent and prayed in her heart. It would be best if Luo Qingtong died. Chapter 2254. True Spill Continent, Hidden World. Yi Qianqian's figure flashed, and he appeared at the place where Luo Qingtong had disappeared. Master! Feng Yu knelt on the ground, not daring to get up. His master had ordered him to protect the evil doctor, but he had allowed her to disappear without a trace in front of him. This was a mistake he didn't dare to explain. Yi Qianxian didn't look at him. Instead, he looked at the place where Luo Qingtong had disappeared. In that place, Yi Qianxian could feel some spatial fluctuations vibrating. Others couldn't see these vibrations, but in Yi Qianxian's eyes, they clearly existed. Wang! His eyes were icy cold, and the aura around his body shook. In the next second, Yi Qianxian's body vibrated with an extremely terrifying aura, spreading to the place where Luo Qingtong had disappeared. These spatial fluctuations were extremely subtle. Besides Yi Qianxian, no one else could see them. Rumble, rumble, rumble. As Yi Qianxian's terrifying aura spread out, the entire hidden world, as well as true Spill continent, began to violently tremble. Seeing this, Su Yu and the others, who had been in tears because of Luo Qingtong's disappearance, slowly calmed down. They looked towards Yi Qianxian's direction with hope. With dark revered strength, he might be able to find out what had happened to Luo Qingtong, what that vortex was, and whether or not there was any danger. As everyone watched Luo Qingtong disappear, they nearly went crazy. They couldn't imagine what would happen if something happened to Luo Qingtong because of this. As for Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others, who stood beside Yi Qianxian, they were also frightened. Along the way, no one knew better than them just how important Luo Qingtong was in Yi Qianxian's heart. The young girl was Yi Qianxian's only reason and goal for living. It was because of Luo Qingtong's existence that Yi Qianxian had changed his mind. He had gone from going with the flow, to fighting against the heavens. He wasn't willing to accept the fate of only being able to live to 28 years old. It could be said that Luo Qingtong was Yi Qianxian's only hope to live. Now that the young girl had disappeared, if something really happened to her, not to mention this star territory, even the entire spacetime outside would find it difficult to withstand Yi Qianxian's wrath. Everyone's hearts trembled with fear. Yi Qianren's aura entered deep into the spatial ripples, carefully investigating the direction and origin of the spatial ripples. However, nothing at all. Yi Qianxian's soul force and consciousness instantly searched the entire true Spill continent and the hidden world space mezzanine. He searched every single place, but he couldn't find Luo Qingtong's aura. The young girl was no longer in true Spill continent. Not only that, but she wasn't even in this star territory. Yi Qianxian's eyes were ice cold. His aura continued to penetrate deep into these space fluctuations, but it was blocked. A continent barrier like true Spill continent couldn't stop him. Only the barriers between star fields could do that. Yi Qianxian's eyes were chilling to the extreme. Without thinking, he continued to stimulate the strength within his body. At this moment, the meridians in his body even emitted a popping sound, and faintly discernible blood seeped out from his body. Master! Chapter 2255. No, the amount of power Master was using had already surpassed the amount of blood essence he had obtained from killing the nine-tailed fox. If this went on, his 3 years of life extension would be gone. Not only that, but his meridians would become even more fragile than before. Her master was already 28 years old. If this went on, Master might not be able to live long enough to find the evil doctor. Master, no. You can't continue to use your power like this. The group of people hurriedly rushed towards Yi Qianxian. Seeing Yi Qianxian's bloodshot eyes about to push them away, the group of people hurriedly shouted, "Master, if you do this, you will hurt yourself. What will happen to the evil doctor then?" Yi Qianren turned a deaf ear to the words that they had said earlier. However, as soon as they finished speaking, Yi Qianqian's sleeves suddenly froze. These words were spoken by Bei Qing. Feng Yu and the others gave him a look of appreciation, and then hurriedly said to Yi Qianxian, "That's right. Master, if something happens to you, what will happen to the evil doctor? Don't forget, the evil doctor's talent is unparalleled. Her talent is incomparably valiant, and her abilities are outstanding. It's fine if she's in the true Spill continent, but if she goes out into the star field, who knows how many people will covet and spy on her. Master, you mustn't let your emotions affect your decisions." The group of people tried their best to persuade him. At this moment, only the matter of Luo Qingtong could appease Yi Qianqian's violent emotions, and allow his master to regain his rationality. Whoever started the trouble should untie it. Luo Qingtong had always been the most important thing in Yi Qianqian's heart. Bang! As soon as their voices came out, Yi Qianqian's sleeves suddenly changed direction, and heavily slammed into a place not far behind them. His eyes seemed to contain countless saber lights and blood swords, and they were extremely sharp, as if they could pierce through the sky. It's the aura of an inscription. Yi Qianqian's gaze was cold. Although his search was fruitless, he was still able to discern some things from it. The formation of those spatial fluctuations was not accidental. Luo Qingtong's disappearance was caused by the power of inscriptions. Was it caused by the inheritance of the immortal Slayer Palace? The light in Yi Qianqian's eyes was as sharp as a sword. He forcibly suppressed the tyrannical aura in his heart that wanted to destroy everything. With a flick of his sleeve, he collected the remaining spatial fluctuations into his sleeve. He wanted to return to that side, and use the spatial fluctuations to find Luo Qingtong's location. The girl would be fine. He wouldn't let anything happen to her. He would definitely investigate the matter behind the Immortal Slayer Palace thoroughly. Yi Qianren's finger gently stroked the surface of the 10-directional dragon ring. After confirming that there was no warning from the aura of the ring, Yi Qianren's eyes suddenly turned cold and his figure disappeared in front of everyone. "Let's go." As his cold voice sounded, Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others all disappeared in front of everyone. Boom! When Yi Qianqian's figure appeared outside the true Spill continent again, the top powerhouses of the Star Alliance had already learned from Uncle Zhang that there was an extremely powerful powerhouse here who wanted to harm the Star Alliance. Chapter 2256. They hid the fact that Mo Zhuling had taken a liking to her and wanted to forcefully bring her back to the Star Alliance. He didn't even hesitate to threaten her with the woman he loved. They knew that if they said that, the top experts of the Star Alliance definitely wouldn't go against Yi Qianxian. After all, the man was strong and Mo Zhuling was in the wrong in the first place. This was completely a personal grudge between her and Yi Qianxian. It had nothing to do with the Star Alliance. However, Yi Qianxian was so strong that if they didn't borrow the strength of the top experts of the Star Alliance, they wouldn't be able to deal with him at all. Therefore, Uncle Zhang and the others insisted that Yi Qianxian wanted to harm the people of the Star Alliance. In addition to the matter of the heavenly nine-tailed fox, the top experts of the Star Alliance immediately believed them. They believed that Yi Qianxian deliberately came to cause trouble for the Star Alliance. The moment Yi Qianren's figure appeared in the starry sky, a group of top experts from the Star Alliance stared at him with an unfriendly expression. "You're the one who stole the heavenly nine-tailed fox that the Star Alliance was supposed to kill and injure the experts of the Star Alliance?" A top expert of the Star Alliance, Purple Supremacy Level 9, looked at Yi Qianxian with an unkind expression. He was on good terms with one of the Star Alliance Grand Hall Masters who went to kill the heavenly nine-tailed fox. The other party was injured by Yi Qianxian and was still recuperating. The people of the Star Alliance were searching everywhere for the person who killed the heavenly nine-tailed fox. They didn't expect the person to be on a low-class continent. When Yi Qianxian saw their imposing auras and figures, he coldly replied with a single word. Scram. He had to immediately return to that side. He didn't have time to tangle with these people here. Impudent. The top experts of the Star Alliance were furious. Which one of them was not a Grand Hall Master of a region? Who knew how many subordinates they commanded? Their strength was enough to show disdain for everyone. When they saw Yi Qianxian treating them like they were nothing, they immediately rushed towards him, not even in the mood to question him. Since the other party was so arrogant, it was obvious that what Uncle Zhang and the others said about the other party wanting to harm the Star Alliance was true. If they let him leave this time, who knew what he would do to the Star Alliance in the future? With that thought in mind, the top players of the Star Alliance immediately attacked Yi Qianxian. Yi Qianxian's eyes turned cold as he watched them charge towards him. The aura in his body that was on the verge of rioting could no longer be held back. With a boom, it violently surged out of his body. Rumble. In an instant, the starry sky collapsed, heaven and earth turned upside down, and blood splattered everywhere. All the top experts of the Star Alliance who rushed within 100 meters of Yi Qianxian exploded and died in an instant. Their bodies were penetrated by the aura of power that shot out of Yi Qianxian's body. With a boom, they exploded into countless pieces in front of everyone's eyes. Countless terrifying auras swirled around Yi Qianxian's body. The starry sky seemed to be just a stepping stone under his feet. The man stepped on the starry sky. His strength was like a dragon, and his aura was like a torch. He was as mighty as the god of the heavens. He was as mighty as the emperor of the demons. At this moment, Yi Qianxian's violent and uncontrollable anger and coldness due to Luo Qingtong's disappearance suddenly erupted. He simply raised his hand. Boom! Chapter 2257. Then with a bang, he was crushed into a pile of flesh and blood under everyone's shocked gazes. A peak level 9 Amethyst Elder was actually unable to fight back against Yi Qianxian's casual move. The Star Alliance's peak level experts who were charging towards Yi Qianxian were instantly stunned. They looked at Yi Qianxian's direction in shock. They didn't expect the other party to be so strong. Uncle Zhang and the others who were about to charge forward with the Star Alliance's peak level experts froze on the spot. They looked at Yi Qianxian in disbelief. Their hearts were overwhelmed with shock. How could this be? How could he be so strong? Everyone's hearts turned cold. Uncle Zhang deeply felt that he had made a huge mistake. He originally thought that by using the Star Alliance's emergency summons, he could use the advantage of numbers to deal with Yi Qianxian. But now, she saw the man casually killing a group of experts. Not to mention the peak-level experts he had gathered from the Star Alliance. Even if there were 10 more batches, they still wouldn't be Yi Qianming's match. What was going on? How could the other party be so strong? Who was he? 3 stars. 1 star, which powerful star domain was he from? How could he appear on a low-level continent where the Star Alliance was located? Uncle Zhang was about to go crazy. The people who were even crazier than him were the peak-level experts he had summoned from the Star Alliance. Yi Qianming's strength was completely beyond their imagination. How could such a person say that he had ill intentions towards the Star Alliance? He could destroy the Star Alliance with a raise of his hand, all right. He could kill a level 9 Amethyst Elder like a chicken or a dog. With this kind of strength, why would he need to scheme against the Star Alliance? The peak-level experts of the Star Alliance all had ashen expressions. How could they not know that there was something fishy going on? They must have been deceived by Uncle Zhang and the others. As for Mo Zhuling, when Yi Qianming's aura erupted, his eyes were filled with shock as he looked in Yi Qianming's direction. So strong. He was actually this strong. It was far more powerful than what she had imagined. All the thoughts in Mo Zhuling's mind were shattered. She originally thought that after everyone captured Yi Qianming, she would run over to plead for mercy and persuade the other party. Who would have thought that this man was so strong that he could kill their Star Alliance's top expert with just a raise of his hand? With this kind of strength, all the things she thought of before were a complete joke. Such a man was powerful, handsome, and had an extraordinary aura. It wasn't hers. Mo Zhuling bit his lips and looked in Yi Qianming's direction. His eyes were filled with infatuation and fear. After Yi Qianming killed the top expert of the Star Alliance, he waved his hand. Boom, boom, boom. A terrifying aura surged around him, and in an instant, it pierced through the bodies of countless top experts of the Star Alliance. The faces of the top experts of the Star Alliance were like doomsday. Uncle Zhang and the others looked at the hell-like scene in front of them and felt their scalps tingle. Just as their legs turned to jelly and they were about to collapse to the ground, boom. In the starry sky not far from the True Spill continent, a huge teleportation array suddenly appeared in front of them. Wang. Silhouettes appeared one after another within it. These figures had extremely terrifying auras lingering around them. Chapter 2258. Strong. So strong. As they looked at the figures that appeared, the shock and horror on their faces had reached the peak. Compared to when Yi Qianxian had revealed his strength, they were even more shocked and frightened. How could this be? Where did all these people come from? How could they appear in this tiny star territory of theirs? At this moment, in front of the numerous peak powerhouses of the Star Alliance, there were figures that were countless times stronger than them. Of these figures that appeared, any one of them had strength that could crush all of them present. Every movement they made was filled with pressure. Their auras soared to the heavens, shaking the heavens. Wang. As these figures and the massive array formation appeared, even the True Spill continent and the surrounding continents in the starry skies began to fiercely tremble. They were completely struck by the powerful auras that condensed from the figures that appeared in the array formation. Rumble, rumble, rumble. One figure after another appeared from the massive array formation. Thousands of people, 10,000 people, tens of thousands of people. Countless auras shot into the heavens, nearly causing the entire starry skies to collapse. This is. The numerous peak powerhouses of the Star Alliance were already dumbfounded. At this moment, as they looked at these figures whose auras soared to the heavens, their bodies began to violently tremble. If it weren't for the last trace of a powerhouse's dignity and reason supporting them, they feared they would have already fallen to their knees, limp and weak. Too strong. Too strong. The strength that overflowed from these people completely surpassed their imaginations. And these people that appeared in front of them numbered in the tens of thousands. The group of people began to violently tremble. As for Yi Qianxian, he had already stopped before the massive array formation appeared. His eyes were ice cold as he looked at the figures that constantly appeared from the massive array formation. He looked at the continents that were violently shaking, especially the True Spill continent. It was shaking so fiercely that it seemed as if it would disintegrate at any moment. The light in Lin Ming's eyes became even colder. He lifted his hand and the aura around him instantly surged out, covering the True Spill continent in front of him. Beneath the shroud of his aura, the violently shaking True Spill continent instantly stabilized. The expressions of Beiqing, Fengyu, and the others beside him changed when they saw the figures that appeared in the formation. Tianqian Guard. Among the 18 imperial guards of Tiandu, the strongest guard. His name was Tian, a name bestowed by the emperor. It's the people from Tiandu. Fengyu's face was solemn as he slowly said. They had long known that after Yi Qianxian returned to Tiandu and took away the Shifang dragon ring that symbolized the successor, the people of Tiandu would sooner or later come knocking on their door. However, he didn't expect it to be at this moment. Not only that, it was the strongest of the 18 imperial guards, the Heavenly Profound Guard. The Heavenly Profound Guard was the head of the 18 imperial guards of Tiandu. Without the emperor's permission, it could not be used. Clearly, they had appeared here at this moment because Supreme Tiandu, who had been in seclusion for many years and had not appeared in front of people for a long time, had awakened. No wonder they hadn't received any news that the Heavenly Profound Guard had appeared near the True Spill continent. If the emperor were to personally act, then the aura blockade here would have no effect at all. Chapter 2259. Thinking of this, Feng Yu suddenly felt very lucky. Fortunately, the evil doctor was not here. Otherwise, it would be troublesome. These people were definitely here for the matter between Master and the evil doctor. While Feng Yu was thinking, the huge array in front of them had stopped operating. A group of heavenly Xian guards in dark black armor densely filled this part of the starry sky. Among them, a beautiful woman stepped out. Her hair was red and her clothes were red. She had the symbol of a noble. The aura around her was astonishing. With every step she took, the starry sky around her would shatter, revealing a deep and dark space that was like a black hole. Amidst the shattered starry sky, she walked to Yi Qianxian. Her beautiful eyes stared straight at Yi Qianxian's handsome face. Then, she respectfully knelt down and bowed. Situ Mei, by His Majesty's order, respectfully invites the young emperor to return to the palace. Respectfully invites the young emperor to return to the palace. Following Situ Mei's voice, the surrounding heavenly Xian guards all half knelt on the ground. Their voices shook the heavens, and their aura soared to the heavens. Seeing this scene, the people of the Star Alliance were even more shocked. They looked at Yi Qianxian in horror, and the shock in their hearts was 1,000 times greater than before. Who was this person? How could he appear in their small galaxy of the Star Alliance? This was simply trying to scam people to death. The faces of the top experts of the Star Alliance were pale. The Purple Elder, a level 9 expert, looked like he was about to faint from anger. Yi Qianxian's background was too frightening. Such a scene, not to mention the entire Star Alliance, even if it was a galaxy, no one would be able to stop him. How could such a person appear in the territory of the Star Alliance? He even had a feud with them. The group of top experts in the Star Alliance thought about it and were about to go crazy. Mo Zhuling's face was also deathly pale. She looked at the crimson-clothed woman who had appeared in front of Yi Qianxian and then looked at the heavenly profound guards. She finally realized how laughable and delusional her thoughts about Yi Qianxian were. The other party was like the clouds and the moon. They were not on the same level as her. Don't even mention the fact that she forced him to join Star Alliance. Even if she tied him to her side, he wouldn't even look at her. Mo Zhuling's heart was filled with jealousy as she thought of this. Because she knew that the noble and dignified Yi Qianxian already had a true love in his heart. She was a young girl from a low-level continent. She was the trash girl that she looked down on. Thinking of this, she bit her lips tightly. At this moment, Yi Qianren's eyes were coldly looking at Situ Mei, and the others. He did not expect that the heavenly profound guard would come personally to invite him. My father's orders. His voice was cold. What else did he say? He had mobilized such a large force just to invite him back to divine capital. His father had really gone to great lengths. Yi Qianxian's eyes were cold and heavy, and his face was full of mockery. Situ Mei immediately said in a low voice, His Majesty has ordered us to invite your highness and the woman you love back to divine capital. She narrowed her eyes slightly, hiding the jealousy in her eyes that was difficult to hide. Chapter 2260. After this matter spread throughout Sky Capital, it was unknown how many women were enraged and gnashed their teeth in anger. Yi Qianqian's appearance was handsome and his strength was peerless. In this world, no one could compare to him. Even if they knew that he wouldn't live past 28 years old, there were still many who wanted to offer themselves to him. But His Highness didn't care about the others' status or how beautiful they were. He didn't care about them at all. He had never allowed anyone to get close to him. They thought that because His Highness wouldn't live past 28 years old, he didn't want to get close to women and didn't want to leave behind his bloodline. But they didn't think that not only did he have a beloved girl, but he also had a child with her. Thinking of the news that came from Sky Capital, Situ Mei fiercely clenched her teeth. But at this moment, she heard Yi Qianqian's voice ring out, chilling to the bone. This lord advises you all to give up on this idea. He coldly looked at Situ Mei the pressure from his body overflowing, directly pressing down on Situ Mei's body. With a puff, Situ Mei spat out a mouthful of blood. She half knelt in front of Yi Qianqian, her lowered eyes filled with horror. His Highness' strength was still so strong. He was almost 28 years old. His unparalleled strength had been suppressed to the extreme. Even so, the strength that he could erupt with could easily crush them. Situ Mei bit her lips, nodding unwillingly, yes. We obey your Highness' orders. Yi Qianqian's strength was something that even the Emperor feared. Unless it was absolutely necessary, they would not and could not afford to anger Yi Qianren. This time, they had come to Truce Spill Continent because the Emperor had ordered them to bring back His Highness. But as for the woman he loved, it didn't matter whether they brought her back or not. She was a girl from a so-called low-level continent. Who knew what kind of dog luck she had stumbled upon to climb up to His Highness? She had obtained his favor. If she didn't have His Highness' protection, who knew what would have happened to her? In this boundless star territory, in the 10 worlds, there were people who overestimated themselves and died every day. The other party should be no exception. Her heart filled with disdain, Situ Mei had no intention of treating Luo Qingtong as an opponent. After answering, she immediately looked at Yi Qianqian and said, in that case, Your Highness, please return to the palace with Mei. Yi Qianqian's eyes were cold and he ignored her. He was going back there anyway. It was just that Situ Mei and the others had come at the right time. Otherwise, it was unknown how many of the heavenly profound guards who came today would be able to return alive. But Yi Qianqian was clear. Since his father wanted him to go back, then he must have a backup plan. This time, they were here to confirm where his weakness was. If Luo Qingtong was here, she would definitely become their main target. His father would not be satisfied until he controlled or destroyed everything that he cared about. Yi Qianqian looked at the top experts of the Star Alliance in front of him. The latter had long since given up on the idea of being enemies with Yi Qianqian. Their legs trembled. The moment Yi Qianqian looked over, they desperately knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Your Highness, please spare us. Your Highness, please spare us. The top experts of the Star Alliance didn't know Yi Qianqian's true identity. Chapter 2261. If they didn't know that they wouldn't be forgiven by someone as strong as Yi Qianqian, they would have pushed Mo Zhuling and the others to their deaths a long time ago. She was the daughter of the Alliance Master, so what if they angered the Alliance Master? They didn't even consider it. So what if they angered the Alliance Master? Mo Zhuling didn't know his limits and tried in vain to control such a strong person. She was simply blinded by greed. The top fighters of the Star Alliance weren't fools. Even if they had been deceived by Uncle Zhang and the others. But now, after fighting with Yi Qianren, he had seen the other party's strength. Now, they saw the Tianxian guards line up in strength. They must have been kicked in the head by a donkey to believe Uncle Zhang and the others. Since Uncle Zhang and the others had lied to them, and the other party wasn't someone who didn't know how to prioritize. Was there even a need to think about where the source of all this was? Other than Mo Zhuling, who else could make Uncle Zhang and the others protect him at all costs, and even lie to them? When they thought about Mo Zhuling's sudden appearance in this remote star sector, and the rumors and clues in the Star Alliance that said Mo Zhuling was searching for the whereabouts of a mysterious strong person, how could they not know what was going on? This Mo Zhuling really overestimated himself. A toad lusting after a swan's meat. He actually dared to covet such a strong person. They didn't know what they had done wrong to provoke the other party to attack them. Now, he remembered them and even used the Star Alliance's emergency summons to take the blame. The top fighters of the Star Alliance hated Mo Zhuling, Uncle Zhang, and the others to death. They didn't kick them to death because they still wanted to leave them for Yi Qianxian to deal with. The top fighters of the Star Alliance kowtowed with all their might. Situ Mei, who was watching from the side, immediately asked, "Your Highness, these people have been disrespectful to you. Do you need to get rid of them?" When Situ Mei said to eliminate them, she naturally didn't mean killing the top powerhouses of the Star Alliance. Instead, he would wipe out the entire Star Alliance and even all the star zones under the Star Alliance. The young Emperor of Tiandu was not to be trifled with. None of them dared to be disrespectful to His Highness. To them, the people in front of them were worse than ants, yet they dared to act arrogantly in front of His Highness. If they did not eliminate it, where would the dignity of Tiandu be? When Situ Mei said this, her eyes were completely unperturbed. She was in charge of the Heavenly Dark Guard and had destroyed countless realms and star regions. The barren land of the Star Alliance was nothing to her. If Yi Qianxian agreed, she would immediately take action. However, as her voice fell, Yi Qianxian coldly said, "No need." Luo Qingtong was no longer in the True Spill continent. There was no danger of the sector beasts being exposed. To Yi Qianxian, killing these people of the Star Alliance was no longer important. Moreover, Yi Qianxian's eyes coldly swept over Situ Mei and the others. With the Heavenly Dark Guard here, the existence of the True Spill continent had been exposed to the people of Tiandu. He had to return to Tiandu to investigate the whereabouts of Luo Qingtong. It was impossible for him to stay here and prevent the people of Tiandu from moving against the True Spill continent. This continent had an extraordinary significance to Luo Qingtong. Yi Qianxian would never allow anything to happen to it. Chapter 2262. Yi Qianxian would not allow a single blade of grass or tree to be damaged. And this was left to the local tyrant, the Star Alliance. It was far better than leaving it to anyone else. Most importantly, Yi Qianxian wanted to give Situ Mei and the others a deterrent. He wanted to let them know that this continent, this star field, was under his watch at all times. If anyone from Sky Capital dared to move against them, he would make them die without a burial ground, their entire race exterminated. Yi Qianxian loved Luo Qingtong. He loved her so much that he could empathize with all her emotions. He would not allow anything to be lost by his young girl's side. If she wasn't here, he would protect her. For this reason, he was willing to let go of the Star Alliance. Otherwise, with Yi Qianxian's previous temperament, he wouldn't have cared about the life or death of the people of True Spill continent. But because Luo Qingtong cared, he also cared. No one can touch the people of True Spill continent. Yi Qianxian's voice was cold. Keep a close eye on them. If anyone dares to touch them, write down their names and report them to me. Otherwise, everyone from the Star Alliance will be guilty of the same crime. This sovereign will personally wipe out all of you in this star field. No one can escape. As Yi Qianxian's words left his mouth, all the peak powerhouses of the Star Alliance nodded their heads like they were pounding garlic. To them, being able to keep their lives was already a great blessing. How could they dare to bargain with Yi Qianren and Yi Qianren? Wasn't it just protecting the safety of the people of True Spill Continent? There was absolutely no problem. This star field was completely under the control of the people from the Star Alliance. As long as they kept a close eye on True Spill Continent, they would know if anyone dared to move against them. At that time, even if they had to risk their lives, they would still report this matter to Yi Qianxian. Otherwise, they would be guilty of the same crime. How unjust would their deaths be? The top powerhouses of the Star Alliance complied, and in an instant, Situ Mei's eyes flashed with a trace of haze. His Highness was extremely ruthless in this matter. It seemed that no one in Tiandu could touch those who had ideas. But does His Highness care so much about that girl? He didn't hesitate to plan for her to such an extent. Just how capable was the other party to be so generous? Situ Mei's heart was filled with jealousy. Who among these people who were born in Tiandu did not know that Yi Qianxian's character was cold, cruel, and ruthless? Because he could only live to 28 years old, and because he had the Heavenly Veins constitution and was extremely talented, Yi Qianxian didn't care about anything or anyone. But now, he held a young girl in the palm of his hand and placed her at the tip of his heart. Even if Situ Mei didn't place Luo Qingtong in her eyes, she couldn't help but be jealous that she was able to obtain Yi Qianxian's favor. Her eyes were red and gloomy, but she still frowned and didn't say anything. Her thoughts were far deeper than anyone else's. She would never reveal the slightest sign of malice towards Luo Qingtong in front of Yi Qianxian. The man's violent and oppressive aura from just a moment ago still remained in her body, causing her internal injuries to be unable to heal. Situ Mei didn't doubt that if she said anything bad about Luo Qingtong, Yi Qianxian might even raise his hand and behead her here and now. The more she thought about it, the more jealousy and hatred she felt in her heart. Chapter 2263. This identity token wasn't much of a treasure, but it could easily store information that couldn't be damaged. It contained a wisp of Yi Qianxian's divine sense. Unless it was someone stronger than him, no one would be able to destroy this token. Like this, even if the entire Star Alliance died, as long as this token remained, Yi Qianxian would be able to know who had attacked True Spill Continent. This would completely put an end to the thoughts of those from Sky Capital who wanted to attack True Spill Continent. As Situ Mei saw this, she finally couldn't bear it any longer. Your Highness. She looked at the token that Yi Qianxian had thrown out. That was the token of Sky Capital's young emperor. It represented Yi Qianxian's status. How many people yearned for it but couldn't get it? Yi Qianxian had so easily thrown it to someone from the Star Alliance. Not only that, but they had also offended his people. And everything he did was for Luo Qingtong. Thinking of this, Situ Mei fiercely clenched her teeth. Your Highness is being too kind. She tried to hide the coldness and jealousy in her eyes. She swept her gaze around and saw Mo Zhuling looking at Yi Qianxian with a dazed expression. As a woman, she was well aware of the other party's gaze. Another person who coveted His Highness. These ant-like people, how could they overestimate themselves? This woman, the woman who had seized His Highness' favor, was also her. Situ Mei's eyes were cold. She lifted her hand and sucked Mo Zhuling into her palm. As the saying goes, you can avoid death, but you can't escape punishment. You dare to be disrespectful to His Highness without any punishment? Where is the dignity of His Highness and Sky Capital? As Situ Mei spoke, she lifted her hand and blasted a force into Mo Zhuling's body. In an instant, Mo Zhuling screamed. All the bones and flesh in her body were instantly smashed to smithereens by Situ Mei's power, leaving only the outer layer of skin intact. Unfortunately, Situ Mei's power was protecting her heart, preventing her from dying no matter what. In the blink of an eye, Mo Zhuling had turned into a pile of minced meat in Situ Mei's hands. Looking at her disgusting appearance, Situ Mei sneered disdainfully in her heart. Such an ant-like person dared to covet His Highness. It was a pity that the person in His Highness's heart could not make a move. Otherwise, she would definitely let him know what it meant to be unable to live and unable to die. But it didn't matter. There would always be a chance in the future. Without His Highness, what was the other party? Situ Mei chuckled, but her eyes were cold. She threw a Mo Zhuling in front of the Star Alliance members, then half-knelt on the ground and begged Yi Qianxian, "Your Highness, please return to the palace. Your Highness, please return to the palace." The heavenly Xian guards replied in unison. Their voices shook the starry sky and their aura soared to the heavens. Yi Qianxian glanced at her coldly, but did not say anything. He had never intended to let Mo Zhuling off. Since the other party had already made a move, then so be it. "Let's go." Yi Qianxian, Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others rushed into the huge array formation. In the next second, the huge array formation reversed. In an instant, everyone disappeared in front of everyone. Only the remaining monstrous aura, as well as the starry sky region that was constantly surging and breaking into pieces, told everyone in the Star Alliance that this was not a dream. Chapter 2264. Hurry! Looking at the token in his hand that was engraved with the word Sky Capital and Dark, the Star Alliance's peak powerhouse's voice trembled as he shouted, "Immediately send out orders. From now on, in every star field where the Star Alliance is located, the people of Truce Spill Continent are not to be provoked. If anyone dares to touch a single hair of theirs, I will chop them up and feed them to the dogs. Also, send more people to Truce Spill Continent. All of them must be peak purple venerable powerhouses." He stamped his feet. "Disguise. Disguise them all. Don't let anyone know. Also, no one is allowed to speak of today's matters." His voice was sharp and shrill. As for the peak powerhouses of the Star Alliance, they didn't say anything. All of them looked as if they were about to face a great enemy as they began to make preparations. Yi Qianxian had said that if anything happened to Truce Spill Continent, then they, along with the entire Star Alliance, would all be punished with the same crime as those who had attacked. The peak powerhouses of the Star Alliance couldn't care about the life or death of others, but they couldn't ignore their own life or death. Truce Spill Continent could not suffer even the slightest mishap. As for Uncle Zhang and the other members of the Star Alliance, their faces were deathly pale. They looked at Mo Zhuling who had been thrown in front of them like a pile of mud. Their hearts were filled with unspeakable fear and regret. This time, they had really kicked an iron plate. Who would have thought that Yi Qianxian's background would be so great? His strength was actually so fierce. As the crowd stood there and watched the peak powerhouses of the Star Alliance disperse, they all understood, this time, the skies of the Star Alliance were about to change. In the past, within the Star Alliance, the Alliance Master's strength reigned supreme. As for the other highest elders of the main hall, they all supported the Alliance Master. However, now that Mo Zhuling had caused such a ruckus, the Alliance Master's prestige was bound to plummet. In addition, with the token that Yi Qianxian had given them, although it might not be able to help the peak powerhouses of the Star Alliance, it wouldn't be able to help them deal with the Alliance Master. But with this token, the Alliance Master and the others wouldn't be able to deal with the peak powerhouses of the Star Alliance. Like this, these people would be able to stand on equal footing with the Alliance Master. The entire situation of the Star Alliance would change because of this. This time, eldest young Miss had really caused them and the Alliance Master to suffer. Uncle Zhang and the others' hearts were filled with regret. Especially Uncle Zhang. If he had a chance to start over Spill Continent. He could only feel regret in his heart, but there was nothing else he could do. The group of people picked up Mo Zhuling, who was lying on the ground like a pile of mud, and left. As for the people of True Spill Continent, they still didn't know what was going on. But with Yi Qianxian collecting the auras of the space fluctuations, Su Yu and the others knew that he would definitely find a way to find Luo Qingtong's whereabouts. And from the reactions of Yi Qianxian and Bei Qing, it could be seen that although Luo Qingtong had gone missing, she might not necessarily be in mortal danger. Everyone's hearts settled down. Su Yu and the others made a firm resolution in their hearts. They would work hard to cultivate their strength so that they could rush out of the Stargate in the future and go to the outer realms to find Luo Qingtong. Master, wait for us. Chapter 2265. The expressions of Su Xiaoxiao and the others were also very cold. The group walked in front of the Grand Supreme Dean without a word and said in a deep voice, "Grand Supreme Dean, we want to cultivate in the Heavenly Yuan sect. We will provide all the cultivation resources ourselves. We only need the people of the Heavenly Yuan sect to provide the mystic realm and cultivation grounds." In the hidden world, the beast-taming King Valley was destroyed and the Star Alliance Hall no longer existed. Now, the strongest was the Heavenly Yuan sect. Of course, although the other sects were not bad, they were still lacking compared to the Heavenly Yuan sect. Su Xiaoxiao and the others wanted to improve their strength, so they naturally chose the strongest Heavenly Yuan sect. And they were not afraid that the people of the Heavenly Yuan sect would harm them. This was because although Luo Qingtong was not here, all the people of the hidden world, except for the Heavenly Yuan sect, had already sworn loyalty to Luo Qingtong and would be her slaves for the rest of their lives. They completely obeyed the orders of Su Yu and the others. It could be said that even if Luo Qingtong was not here, the entire hidden world was still in the hands of Su Yu and the others. Even if the people of the Heavenly Yuan sect had any ideas, they would not be able to stir up any waves. Moreover, these days of interaction were enough for them to see the nature of the people of the Heavenly Yuan sect. They were definitely not people who would go back on their words. They still understood the character of the Grand Supreme Dean. Thinking of this, Su Xiaoxiao and the others could not help but tear up. That was their boss. Even if she was not here, she would still arrange their future very well. In this life, they were so lucky to be able to follow by Luo Qingtong's side. Boss, just you wait. We will definitely cultivate well and then look for you. Little Tyrant Yuan and the others said silently in their hearts. No matter how difficult the future was, no matter what they faced, no matter if they were going to face a storm of blades or a rain of swords, they would not give up. Boss, wait for us. We will definitely find you. Everyone clasped the purified immortal jade bones in their hands tightly. Their hearts were filled with determination. The Grand Supreme Dean looked at them and nodded solemnly. Don't worry. Your problem will be the Heavenly Yuan sect's problem in the future. Moreover, the Sky Yuan sect's intention to follow Luo Qingtong will not change. Master, don't you agree? The Grand Supreme Dean looked at the Heaven Yuan sect master and the others. That's right. The Heavenly Yuan sect master and the others said without hesitation. Everything I've said before is still valid. In the future, the Heavenly Yuan sect will be under Luo Qingtong. In the entire hidden world, Luo Qingtong reigns supreme. There will be no change in this matter. In addition, if you and the people around you want to cultivate in the Heavenly Yuan sect, you are always welcome. Su Xiaoxiao and the others had gone through life and death with Luo Qingtong, so they were very close to each other. Naturally, the Heaven Branch sect master and the others would not be stingy with their own cultivation grounds. Although Luo Qingtong wasn't here, the hidden world was still her world. A young girl's planning was hard to find in the world. Everyone from the Heavenly Yuan sect gasped in amazement. If it weren't for the fact that Luo Qingtong's departure was so sudden, even Yi Qianxian would not have been able to find any clues. They would have thought that Luo Qingtong had arranged it herself. In reality, Luo Qingtong was completely unaware of all this. Boz. Chapter 2266. What's going on? Luo Qingtong furrowed her brows and looked at her surroundings. She had already woken up and opened her eyes when the huge whirlpool engulfed her. However, it was too late and she was sucked into the whirlpool. Luo Qingtong looked at her surroundings and guessed that she was sucked into a place similar to a teleportation space. Luo Qingtong furrowed her brows. She had been teleporting for a long time, but she still hadn't arrived. This was definitely not an ordinary teleportation array. Luo Qingtong vaguely sensed a trace of inscription power from the aura of this array. Just like Yi Qianxian, Luo Qingtong's first thought was that it had something to do with the Immortal Slayer Palace. Could it be that the enemies who massacred the Immortal Slayer Palace and forced Tian Mingzi to flee with the inheritance of the Immortal Slayer Palace had come looking for her? Luo Qingtong could only think of one reason. Although she didn't know how the other party knew of her existence and how she was sucked into this teleportation space, Luo Qingtong was very shocked. She had already obtained the inheritance of the Immortal Slayer Palace. The 9-story exquisite pagoda and the life and death sword had already recognized her as their master. Adding Little Pig, Luo Qingtong's enmity with the enemies of the Immortal Slayer Palace was huge. It was impossible to reconcile. If the other party wanted to obtain the inheritance of the Immortal Slayer Palace, they had to kill her. Then, they had to use her blood to break the contract between her, the 9-story exquisite pagoda, the life and death sword, and Little Pig. This was absolutely impossible. Luo Qingtong's eyes were cold. Her life was only in her hands. Whoever wanted to kill her, she would kill them first. However, the power in her body had completely disappeared. It was not the time to fight with the other party. As Luo Qingtong thought about it, her brows furrowed. At this moment, splat. In her mind, Little Pig rushed out of the 9-story exquisite pagoda. What happened? It looked at the space where Luo Qingtong was at the moment. The space around her was rapidly flowing away. Suddenly, its 2 small green bean eyes widened. It had just fainted due to exhaustion. How could Luo Qingtong appear in such a place? It's a teleportation array. It stared at the surroundings and asked Luo Qingtong, "Why are you here?" Wasn't she arguing with that huge skeleton? How did he appear here in the blink of an eye? Could it be that the land of the fallen immortals was hiding some kind of secret? Little Pig had no idea what happened after that. Naturally, he didn't know that Luo Qingtong had already killed that skeleton. It was a complete accident that it appeared here. I don't know. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes. I can feel the power of inscriptions. I wonder if it has something to do with the enemies of the Immortal Slayer Palace. I was suddenly sucked here. Luo Qingtong briefly explained her situation to Little Pig. In an instant, Little Pig jumped up and down in excitement. Are you serious? You don't have any strength left. Oh. This is bad. Little Pig jumped up and down like an ant on a hot pan. If Luo Qingtong had strength, it wouldn't be so panicked. This woman had always had strange abilities and extraordinary means. She could use 10% of her strength as 10% of her strength. As long as she had strength, Little Pig believed that she could find a way to escape. However, if she didn't have strength, she would be doomed. Chapter 2267. Little Pig was anxious as he thought about it. Luo Qingtong's expression was still calm. She wasn't worried about whether she could escape or not. As long as the enemies of the Immortal Slayer Palace wanted to get something from the Immortal Slayer Palace, she had a way to escape from them. Luo Qingtong had been hunted down countless times in her previous life. This was not a big deal for her. The only thing that Luo Qingtong was worried about was her face. She raised her hand and touched her face. Once this face fell into the eyes of the other party, even if she was lucky enough to escape this time, her identity would not be able to be hidden. At that time, the enemies could come to the true Spill continent to find her. In this way, unless she didn't go back for the rest of her life, they would find her sooner or later. Moreover, what about Grandpa and the others? Luo Qingtong frowned as she thought of this. It wasn't that she didn't think of disguising herself, but the transmission space was extremely unstable. It wasn't convenient to disguise herself here. More importantly, the enemies of the Immortal Slayer Palace were very powerful. Her disguise technique could deceive ordinary people, but it might not work if she wanted to deceive them. Luo Qingtong frowned even harder as she thought of this. At this moment, chirp chirp chirp. In Luo Qingtong's sleeve, there was a faint and weak cry. It was the small sector beast that had almost been sucked dry. It had come back to its senses and was struggling in her sleeve, trying to get out. Luo Qingtong listened to its voice, and her eyes suddenly lit up. She took the little guy out. Chirp chirp chirp. The little guy was twisting in her hand as if it was protesting something. It was a sector beast. It wanted a hug. Did you know that it wanted a hug? However, Luo Qingtong didn't understand what it was saying at all. She ignored it and said to Little Pig, "Humph, ask it if it has any power left. The kind that can turn me into my previous life's appearance." Luo Qingtong remembered that when she had flashed through the small sector beast space of consciousness, she had seen an image of herself from her previous life. There was a huge birthmark on her face that covered more than half of her face. He looked as ferocious as an evil spirit. Such an image was enough to cover her face and prevent the enemies of the Immortal Slayer Palace from recognizing her identity. At that time, she would find a way to escape and return to True Spill Continent. The world was so big, where could the other party find him? He didn't believe that the other party would be able to use such a method of crossing star fields again and again. What's more, he wouldn't give them the chance to do so. At that time, she would naturally set up layers of protection around herself. As Luo Qingtong thought of this, she stared at the little ball in her hand with a burning gaze. Chirp. The little dumpling felt goosebumps all over its body from being stared at by her, and the little ahog on top of its head instantly stood up. It stared at Luo Qingtong, wondering why she was looking at it like that. Did she think that it was useless because it could only help her recall the power of her previous life once? Chirp chirp chirp. It was wronged. The power of the previous life that she had chosen was too strong. It was completely beyond its ability, okay? Woo woo woo, it was still a baby. How could she treat it like this? Chapter 2268. While the two little guys were humming and chirping, Luo Qingtong felt the space around them fluctuating more and more violently. It was obvious that the teleportation formation was about to reach its destination. How is it? Luo Qingtong said in a deep voice when she saw Little Pig turning to look at her. It says it can, Little Pig's voice sounded. Before it could finish, Luo Qingtong gave the final word, okay, let it transform. Little Furball, transform me into someone from my previous life, the one with the birthmark on my face. Luo Qingtong gave Little Furball a brief instruction. She knew that Little Pig could understand her words. The reason why she let Little Pig talk to it was because Luo Qingtong couldn't understand it. Otherwise, Luo Qingtong would be able to communicate with it directly without Little Pig. Chirp chirp. Luo Qingtong's voice sounded, and little Furball immediately nodded. At this time, the space around them fluctuated more violently. It was as if Luo Qingtong was going to be ejected in the next second. Quick! Luo Qingtong said to little Furball. Once she was ejected, it would be too late even if she could transform. Once her face was exposed, her identity would also be exposed. Chirp chirp. Hearing her voice, little Furball suddenly jumped up. Then, a force from its body landed on Luo Qingtong's body. With a boom, the space around them fluctuated more violently when its force landed on Luo Qingtong's body. In the next second, Luo Qingtong was ejected. Hey, wait a minute, I haven't finished speaking. Ow! While Luo Qingtong and little Furball were talking, Little Pig was about to speak. However, it was too late. The space around them fluctuated violently. With a boom, both Little Pig and Luo Qingtong were ejected. Ow ow ow! Master! Little Pig's round and chubby body tumbled in the air. Just as it was about to be flung to God knows where, Luo Qingtong reached out her hand and firmly caught it. Shwa! Luo Qingtong's body somersaulted in mid-air and then stabilized. The surroundings had already changed. Clearly, she had already left the teleportation space. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly flashed. She lowered her head, and under the cover of her spinning body, she raised her hand to wipe her face. Very good. Half of it was smooth, while the other half was rough. The smooth areas were delicate and tender, while the rough areas were hard to touch. One could even vaguely feel the rough surface of the skin. Clearly, Xiao Tuanzi's power had been successfully unleashed. Luo Qingtong's current appearance was her appearance from her previous life. That rough area should be where the birthmark was. After confirming that her appearance had changed greatly, and that her original appearance should be unrecognizable, Luo Qingtong's heart calmed down. She casually touched her sleeve and found that little Furball had fainted after unleashing its power. She immediately covered her sleeve and then raised her head to look at the surroundings. This place is, she put on an ignorant expression and pretended that she didn't know anything. She wanted to think of a way to get away with it. Chapter 2269. Then, a ghost-like wailing sound rang out. Aw aw aw. Good disciple, I've finally found you. Disciple, save me. As this voice rang out, Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed and her body, which was about to dodge, froze. This voice, this tone of voice, Song Qing. Luo Qingtong looked at the figure flying towards her. Who else could it be but Song Qing, the teacher of the Empire of Qin branch in the Tianyu Empire? It was actually him who summoned her here. Damn! Luo Qingtong's heart was full of curses. She was scared to death. She had been thinking for a long time in the transmission space about how to escape from the evil hands of the Immortal Slayer Palace's enemy, but it turned out to be a false alarm. Simply. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. She didn't expect it to be Song Qing. He had left a letter for her, saying that he had something to do and had left. But there was no news from him. Who would have thought that he would suddenly appear at this time? And he even used such a method to summon her here. It would be strange if she thought it was him. Damn! Luo Qingtong's mood was up and down. It was simply too exciting. When Song Qing rushed in front of Luo Qingtong, he saw her face covered by a birthmark. He couldn't see her original face at all. In an instant, he flashed to the other side. You. Who are you? Song Qing stared at the girl in front of him who had no strength or aura and had a large birthmark on her face. The shock in his heart was simply indescribable. Why are you here? He raised his hand and pointed at Luo Qingtong. He was flustered and exasperated. Where is my good disciple? He clearly used something with Luo Qingtong's aura to summon her here. Why wasn't it Luo Qingtong who appeared here? Who was this girl? Song Qing did not recognize that the girl in front of him was Luo Qingtong. After all, the birthmark on Luo Qingtong's face couldn't be any more real. He would never have thought that this unfamiliar girl with a large birthmark in front of him was Luo Qingtong. When the latter heard his words, he felt a wave of annoyance in his heart. Obedient disciple, your sister, I've never seen a master who cheats his disciple like you. She was almost scared to death just now. However, the situation was still unclear. Luo Qingtong was not ready to acknowledge Song Qing. She glanced around and found that there was a group of people around. At this moment, seeing that Luo Qingtong had been summoned by Song Qing and that the latter had obviously found the wrong person, a tall and skinny middle-aged man in the crowd laughed. Ha! Song City, the heavens really don't bless your heavenly wind inscription city. I gave you such a good opportunity to gather the strength that your heavenly wind inscription city had accumulated for so many years to activate the interstellar domain teleportation array and summon someone with the power of inscription patterns. You actually summoned the wrong person. What a joke. As he spoke, he laughed loudly. That's right. The group of people behind him laughed as well. A man looked at Luo Qingtong behind Song Qing and laughed. I don't think he summoned the wrong person. His gaze was filled with contempt. Luo Qingtong did not have any aura of strength around her, let alone knowing inscription patterns. Song Qing, that fool, must have been so anxious that he thought of using such a method to stall for time. He said that his disciple was a genius and would definitely be able to beat them in inscription patterns. Chapter 2270. Who doesn't know that Song Cheng's inscription technique is terrible to the extreme? He can't even enter the entry level. His existence is the biggest joke in the entire Heavenly Wind inscription city. For his disciple to be able to win against them in inscription technique is even more of a joke than the heavens. This inscription man seeking array has never made a mistake, let alone gathering all the energy stored in Heavenly Wind inscription city. From what I see, he's deliberately stalling for time. He wants to borrow the 3 days of activation of the array to delay the deadline for Heavenly Wind Inscription City to hand over the inscription tower. However, the man looked at Song Qing and Luo Qingtong and laughed in disdain. Trash will always be trash, sooner or later they'll show their true colors. Song Qing, you can't delay any longer, so you purposely said that you summoned the wrong person, right? What? You want to do it again? Unfortunately, even if you want to play a joke for us to see, the people of Lengyu Inscription City won't bother to continue tormenting you. Just wait for the inscription tower to change owners tomorrow. The man said as he looked at the tall and thin man beside him and said, City Lord, don't you agree? The City Lord of Lengyu Inscription City immediately nodded and said, that's right. Song Qing, you're not afraid of losing face and want to play a monkey trick for us, but the people of Lengyu Inscription City aren't willing to see it. The inscription tower has stayed in your Heavenly Wind Inscription City for long enough. If it wasn't for the bet you made with us to learn the inscription technique within 12 years, we would have let the inscription tower stay in your Heavenly Wind Inscription City for another 3 years. The inscription tower would have long been in our Lengyu Inscription City. Now, no matter how many impossible conditions and requests you make, we will definitely not agree to it. Speaking until here, the City Lord of Lengyu Inscription City had a gloomy expression. It was because they were certain that Song Qing, who had 0 inscription talent, would not be able to learn the inscription technique, so they made a bet with him with the inscription tower. In the end, Song Qing, this trash, actually learned the inscription technique within 12 years. Although he was trash, he was still a proper inscription master. Therefore, they had no choice but to place the inscription tower in Heavenly Wind Inscription City for another 3 years. During these 3 years, they couldn't challenge Skywind Inscription City, nor could they take the inscription tower away. Because of this, he almost lost his position as the city lord. At this moment, when they heard that Song Ching had decided to call his disciple over to help, everyone from Lengyu Inscription City came over to watch the show. They wanted to see what kind of tricks Song Ching could play and what kind of deity he could summon. In the end, he called out such an ugly girl. What's more, he's a trash with trash strength. The group of people from Lengyu City felt disdain in their hearts. They were certain that this was another trap set by Song Ching. He wanted them to wait for him to summon them again. What kind of joke was this? Did he think they were fools? This time, the interstellar domain teleportation array had already used up all the power that Heavenly Wind Inscription City had accumulated over the years. If he wanted to activate the interstellar domain teleportation array again and use the inscription technique to search for someone, he had no idea how long he would have to wait. Unless there was something wrong with their brains, they wouldn't let him do it again. Chapter 2271. Behind him, Song Ching hurriedly shouted, "Hey, wait! City Lord Zhang, please wait. I really summoned the wrong person. Give me another chance. Just one chance." However, when the people of Lengyu City heard his words, they were even more certain that he was deliberately stalling for time. They simply ignored him. In an instant, the crowd had all left. As for the people of Heavenly Wind Inscription City, they looked at Song Ching and sighed. "Forget it, Ching, you've already tried your best." An old man who was supported by others walked out at this time. He coughed and said to Song Ching, "Master." Seeing the old man walk out from the crowd, Song Ching's eyes turned red. This old man was none other than his master, the city lord of Heavenly Wind Inscription City. The old man believed in education without discrimination. As long as someone wanted to learn inscription techniques, he would teach them regardless of their talent. Song Ching had been his disciple for dozens of years, but he had never learned inscription techniques. Others mocked him and told the old man to stop teaching him and kick him out to avoid tarnishing the old man's reputation. But the old man had never done that. The old man treated him like a teacher and a father. That was why when Heavenly Wind Inscription City was in danger, Song Ching stood up without hesitation and used 12 years as a bet, desperately wanting to learn inscription techniques. He heard that returning to his true self was the easiest way to gain enlightenment. That was why he sealed his strength and returned to his hometown, the True Spill continent. In the Tianyu Empire, where he was born, he became a small mentor, hoping that he could gain enlightenment and comprehend inscription techniques. However, no matter how hard he tried, he could not succeed. Just when he was disheartened and prepared to stay for another year and return to Inscription City to live and die with Heavenly Wind, he met that weirdo, Luo Qingtong. The young girl said that she wanted to learn inscription techniques from him, but Song Ching did not take it seriously. However, who would have thought that such a young girl would reveal such a peerless talent in inscription techniques? Song Ching was restricted by the bet, so he could not tell Luo Qingtong his identity. Even the inscription technique that was taught to him was something that he had accidentally obtained. However, who would have thought that under such circumstances, Luo Qingtong would be able to deduce many things from one instance? Not only did she learn the inscription technique, she even taught him. If this matter was spread out, it would probably cause others to roar with laughter. No one would believe it at all. In this world, how could a student teach a teacher? However, Luo Qingtong did it. Hence, Song Ching had no choice but to think of Luo Qingtong for the crisis in Sky Wind Inscription City. Because he was afraid that Luo Qingtong's strength was not enough, traveling through the star field would damage her body. He had purposely convinced his master and the people of Sky Wind Inscription City to allow him to use the power that Sky Wind Inscription City had stored for so many years to summon Luo Qingtong. Who would have thought that he would summon the wrong person? Thinking of this, Song Ching felt that he was extremely useless. Thinking about the terrifying situation his master and Tianfeng Inscription City would face once the people of Lengyu Inscription City succeeded, Song Qing could not help but tear up. Master. He looked at the old man and choked with sobs. Chapter 2272. Uncle, why don't you solve the problem on my side first? Luo Qingtong looked at the red-eyed Song Qing and sighed in her heart. She was originally a bit angry that Song Qing had suddenly summoned her here. After all, Su Yu and Su Xiaoxiao still didn't know anything about the true Spill Continent. There was also Yi Qianxian. Thinking of her sudden disappearance, Luo Qingtong frowned. She didn't know how worried and anxious that man would be. But as she saw Song Cheng's red-eyed appearance, she couldn't find the words to blame him. She was well aware of Song Cheng's personality. If it wasn't for the fact that he had no other choice, he wouldn't have used such a method to summon her here. Listening to the words of those people, this place seemed to be called Heavenly Wind Inscription City. And those people were from Cold Jade Inscription City. Were they fighting over something called the Inscription Tower? Was it because of this that Song Qing had specially used an interstellar transmission array to summon her from the true Spill Continent? Luo Qingtong wasn't someone who didn't know what was good for her. From the words of the people around her, she could feel that this array formation wasn't easy to use. She feared that Song Cheng's purpose in using this array formation, besides quickly summoning her from the true Spill Continent, was to protect her. After all, when Song Qing left the true Spill Continent, she was only a martial king. No matter how much he thought about it, he never imagined that her strength would increase so quickly over the years. She was already a saint venerable. In such a situation, if he wanted to bring her to the outer realms without damaging her body and foundation, he could only use a special method. As Luo Qingtong thought of this, she couldn't be angry at Song Qing for suddenly summoning her here. And as her voice sounded out, Song Qing also remembered that there was a little girl here that he had mistakenly summoned. He had clearly summoned Luo Qingtong, but the result was a little girl that he didn't know at all. Song Cheng's heart felt stifled. He couldn't figure out where the problem came from. Maybe it was just like what the people of Lengyu City said, the heavens didn't bless their heavenly wind inscription city. The old man beside him also coughed and said to him, "That's right, Qing. You must make sure this young lady is well taken care of. She was summoned here by mistake. She's innocent. As for the matter of Heavenly Wind Inscription City, you don't have to worry about it. Everyone has their own fate. Maybe our Heavenly Wind Inscription City's calamity has arrived." "Yes." Song Qing looked at him and nodded. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. In any case, if he really couldn't do it in the end, he would just live and die with Heavenly Wind Inscription City. Thinking of this, he immediately said to Luo Qingtong, "Come, little girl, come with me." No matter what, he was the one who summoned her, so he had to settle her down. Otherwise, he wouldn't feel at ease. However, if she wanted him to send her back to the true Spill Continent, that was impossible. Firstly, Song Qing didn't have that kind of ability. Secondly, the power of Heavenly Wind Inscription City had been exhausted. It was impossible to restart the array formation again. As Song Qing thought of this, he felt very guilty. He brought Luo Qingtong to his place of residence. Chapter 2273. Don't call me teacher. Although I accidentally summoned you out, I'll make sure you settle down properly. Other than that, there's nothing else. Song Qing said without turning his head. Although his demonic disciple didn't respect him and was always unwilling to acknowledge him as her teacher, she still had to urge him. However, Song Qing had already decided that Luo Qingtong was his only disciple. Furthermore, with his inscription skills, what kind of disciple could he teach? It was enough to have his precious disciple. Song Ching was very suspicious that he had summoned the wrong person this time. Perhaps it was Luo Qingtong's masterpiece. That girl had always been cautious and had many tricks up her sleeve. Perhaps she had tampered with the inscription tool and changed the aura inside. That was why his inscription man-hunting array had gone wrong. When he thought of this, Song Ching couldn't help but feel proud. That was his disciple. She was peerless and unique in the world. Although she was too smart and he would be cheated for no reason. However, he was happy to do so. So what if he was happy to pamper his disciple? He didn't want anyone else no matter how many came. No. He waved his hand as he spoke. When his voice sounded, Luo Qingtong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Master, it's me. Luo Qingtong rolled her eyes. She knew that he had misunderstood and thought that she wanted to acknowledge him as her master. I'm Qingtong. When Luo Qingtong spoke, Song Ching suddenly stopped in his tracks. Qingtong. Song Ching suddenly turned around and looked at Luo Qingtong as if he had seen a ghost. No matter how he looked at her, the person in front of him didn't look like Luo Qingtong. His precious disciple was born beautiful and beautiful. How could she be so ugly? She even had such a huge birthmark on her face. Don't lie to me. Song Ching looked at Luo Qingtong with a serious expression. His gaze towards the young girl was extremely cold. Although he had summoned the wrong person, he was willing to compensate her. However, this wasn't a reason for her to lie to him. She wanted to pretend to be his disciple and reap benefits. She had the wrong idea. Luo Qingtong looked at him speechlessly. Do you want me to tell you about how you couldn't learn the inscription technique no matter how hard you tried? You treat a 10 square meter space inscription pattern array as a treasure, Before Luo Qingtong could finish her words, Song Ching pounced on her and covered her mouth. Wait. Song Ching looked at the ugly girl in front of him and asked, where did we first meet? In the dormitory of Tianyu Academy. Right. Luo Qingtong looked at him and said with a smile, someone said that he would accept a disciple on behalf of a friend, but in the end, he didn't mention it at all. Since you don't recognize me as your disciple, why don't you introduce me to your old friend? I don't mind changing my master. I mind. Song Ching was now completely convinced that Luo Qingtong was his disciple. He looked at the young girl in front of him, feeling both puzzled and excited. You stinky girl. It's really you. How did you become like this? Also, why didn't you recognize me when you just came out? You made me so anxious. Song Cheng's voice was trembling. His heart was on a roller coaster ride. It was simply too exciting. This stinky girl played him like this. Chapter 2274. You still have the nerve to say that. Luo Qingtong rolled her eyes at him. Why did you summon me here so casually? Who knows what's going on? I thought it was my enemy. Luo Qingtong said with narrowed eyes. She had the inheritance of the Immortal Slayer Palace, and she didn't know what was going on here. Naturally, she had to be careful. After all, this was the Outer Realm, and not a small place like the True Spill Continent. What if she accidentally exposed herself and attracted the enemies of the Immortal Slayer Palace? Not to mention, this was a place related to inscription patterns. The Immortal Slayer Palace used to be the leader of inscription patterns, the #1 sect. Maybe the forces here were related to the former enemies of the Immortal Slayer Palace. How could Luo Qingtong be careless? Song Ching thought about it. This time, he summoned Luo Qingtong here, and it was indeed too sudden. No wonder this girl hid it from him and didn't want to acknowledge him. Seeing Luo Qingtong's face change, Song Chang's lips twitched. He felt a little guilty in his heart. At that time, he only thought of the benefits of the interstellar transmission array, but he didn't expect that Luo Qingtong didn't know anything and was teleported here. It was already good enough that she wasn't scared to death. Cough, as he thought about it, he suddenly felt that he was not in the right. This master didn't consider it so clearly. But I really didn't mean it. My dear disciple. You have to believe me. Song Qing looked pitiful. He was afraid that Luo Qingtong would be unhappy and really replace him as her master. At that time, where could he find such a good disciple? No way. He begged for this disciple shamelessly, and he didn't want her even if he died. Okay, I know. Luo Qingtong looked at him with a burst of annoyance. If not for this, she would have ignored Song Qing long ago. Why would she acknowledge him? Who was sincere and who was insincere, who had the intention and who didn't, she couldn't tell. That's good, that's good. Song Qing patted his chest and rejoiced. But very quickly, he thought of the reason why he called Luo Qingtong over, and immediately said with a sad face, "My precious disciple. You have to help me this time. Your master, was bullied so badly." Luo Qingtong's lips twitched as she looked at him. He had never seen someone who could ask his disciple to help him so smoothly. She had to hand it to this master of hers. "Let's go back to your place first," Luo Qingtong said. She also wanted to understand where she was and how to return to True Spill Continent. She had given up on the interstellar domain teleportation array. The words of those people were very clear. Using the teleportation array had almost exhausted all of the power of the Heavenly Wind Inscription City. It was almost impossible to send her back again. Moreover, if the reverse teleportation array was so simple, Song Qing would not have only summoned him here and not gone over himself. With that thought in mind, Luo Qingtong and Song Qing immediately returned to his place. Soon, she learned the basic situation of this place from the other party. The place she was at was indeed Heavenly Wind Inscription City. Inscription City was specially built by the Inscription Masters Association as a place for inscription masters to communicate and live. It was independent of the major star fields and was not threatened by any powerhouses. Every star field of 6 stars and above had an inscription city. Chapter 2275. As Luo Qingtong heard this, she looked at Song Qing with a smile that wasn't a smile and said, "So Master is from the Heavenly Wind region. Sorry for the disrespect." She used to think that Song Qing was someone from the True Spill Continent who was lucky enough to discover the inscription pattern technique. Although she found it strange that his analysis of the inscription pattern technique was so simple, she thought that it was because Song Qing accidentally came into contact with the inscription pattern technique. He didn't understand the theory behind it, so he studied it repeatedly. That was why he had such an understanding. In the end, he was someone from the Heavenly Wind Inscription City. How could he not know what the inscription pattern technique was when he was from the inscription pattern city? He might even have memorized the low-level entry-level techniques by heart. That was why he was able to analyze those theories so thoroughly with a body that had zero talent. Damn it. Luo Qingtong put on a fake smile, but Song Qing felt a chill run down his spine. Without thinking, he pounced on Luo Qingtong and howled. "Disciple! Master, I was forced to do this. At that time, I made a bet with the people of Cold Jade Inscription City. 12 years, that is, if I could learn the inscription pattern technique, then they would not be able to challenge Heavenly Wind Inscription City and take away the inscription pattern tower. At that time, the content of the bet was that no inscription master was allowed to help me. If I went out to seek a breakthrough, I could not reveal my identity to the outside world. I could not reveal the matter of Heavenly Wind Inscription City and Cold Jade Inscription City to seek help from others. That's why Master hid it from you and did not tell you my identity. Even my cultivation, because it was related to my identity as a foreigner, that's why the seal could not be lifted. Song Cheng was just short of clinging onto Luo Qingtong and bawling his eyes out. Seeing him like this, Luo Qingtong tugged at the corner of her lips. "Alright, I was just casually saying it." Luo Qingtong also admired this master of hers. He didn't have any integrity at all. What happened to the dignity of a master? However, ever since the other party shamelessly insisted on being her master, he had lost all sense of shame. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched even more as she thought about it. That's enough. Seeing that Song Cheng was about to continue howling, Luo Qingtong held her forehead and hurriedly stopped him. She said, "Hurry and sit down." "Master, I still have something to ask you." As soon as Luo Qingtong's words came out, Song Cheng immediately sat upright and still, looking like a filial master. He asked Luo Qingtong, "Disciple, if you have something to ask, feel free to ask." "Master, I will definitely tell you everything I know." Luo Qingtong's lips twitched, then she asked him, "Since you've successfully learned the inscription technique, logically speaking, they shouldn't be able to challenge Heavenly Wind Inscription City. Why are they here now? And that inscription tower, what exactly is it?" The moment Luo Qingtong's words left her mouth, Song Cheng's serious expression instantly collapsed. "Don't mention it." His face was gloomy as he said angrily, "Those bastards from Cold Jade Inscription City, we agreed that if I successfully learned the inscription technique, they wouldn't be able to challenge Heavenly Wind Inscription City and take away the inscription tower." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.